is outside the left door and to the right. We also have blue slips out there for anyone who wants to address us during audience communication. This is a meeting where we spend a lot of time going over all of the items that will be coming for a vote at our regular meeting or our voting meeting, which is next week, August 21st. So if you want to hear the nitty-gritty, this is the meeting that you really want to tune into. And if you don't see this tonight, people can watch it on video, right? On YouTube. So again, welcome everyone, and we'll jump right in with audience communication, which is our first item. I don't have any blue slips. Does anybody want to give me a blue slip and address the board tonight? I don't see anybody rushing to the podium, so we'll move on to item 2, our committee of the whole. We have one item under the committee of the whole, and that's item 2A, and that is recognition of Bruce Rivera, principal of Emerson Middle School. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Abate.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. So this is fun and unusual because we've had a vote last week, yes, to approve Mr. Rivera as new principal at Emerson Middle School. So I can just relax and enjoy introducing for all the folks online and in person and on all the different networks, Bruce Rivera as the principal of Emerson Middle School. So I want to tell you a little bit about Bruce. He's entering his 28th year in the district. He has been teaching, leading, mentoring, and being an all-around good human since 1996 here in LPS. Everywhere he has gone, he has found his way into a leadership position. He started teaching science and PE at Riley. He moved on to Churchill, where actually before that, he was department chair for science there at Riley, moved on to Churchill, became department chair at Churchill for science. When we were in need of a fill-in for AP in the scheduling office, Bruce Rivera, tap, 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 and Bruce Rivera answered the call. Did that so well that he stayed on permanently as an AP there in the business office. When we had Livonia Virtual running, again, Bruce, tap, tap, answered the call, helped us out in the middle of the pandemic and being one of the lead administrators for Livonia Virtual. And then, of course, as you see him now, principal of Emerson Middle School. And we're so excited for Bruce. I've had an opportunity to speak with him and his new assistant principal, Nicole Graziano, and just kind of listen to how they're connecting and their complementary skills. Bruce asks all the right questions about what he's heading into right now, and he clearly knows the age group and loves them, which is important, right? You think that's a given, but the middle school is, you gotta love it. You gotta love it. And I think he's gonna do really well there. They've already jumped into wrapping up the master's schedule, planning for the year. There's a really good connection between our two administrators they're forming, and once the staff is back, I'm sure they'll all connect just as well. Really excited to have Bruce in this opportunity. We are very confident he's the right person at the right time. So congratulations, Bruce Rivera, principal, Emerson Middle School.
So is Bruce going to come forward? Tonight he's prepared. Tap.
Well, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed members of the board and respected colleagues, and certainly some dear friends. So today is with immense gratitude and excitement that I sit before you, humbled and honored to start my new role as the principal of Emerson Middle School. This role represents not just a position, but a profound commitment to our students, to our community here, to the students of Emerson Middle School, and to the staff of Livonia Public Schools, that I get to continue the journey here just in a different realm, back to my roots, I suppose. So I really can't express how thrilled I am, how excited I am for this responsibility. Thank you to the president, Mr. Mark Johnson, and to the board for entrusting me to this. It's a significant role. I know how important that middle level can be. So your dedication to our schools, to our students' growth is really, truly remarkable, and I enjoy everything that I've been doing and everything that you've been doing to show that education and its transformation and its power. To Superintendent Andrea, your vision and commitment to fostering an excellent school district are truly commendable. I'm grateful for your support. I look forward to working closely with all of the administration and cabinet as well to elevate, dare I say, soar our students' educational experience, because the eagles we soar, as I'm learning. And there's some great soaring signs that I know my new assistant principal, Graziano, is doing. To the directors of Human Resources, it certainly was a journey, so thank you, Mr. Abate and Mrs. Keats in the back there. Your meticulous efforts in assembling a team of exceptional leaders, teachers, counselors, and all our support staff really deserve recognition. That was clear at our alt meeting in terms of employee capacity and really finding true talent to keep our students going and finding the best individuals. To Kevin Etu, I'd like to say thank you, Director of Secondary Education. Your mentorship at my time at Churchill was invaluable. I appreciate our friendship. Your insights have shaped my approach to education, and your guidance will be invaluable in my next role. To all my good friends and colleagues, I know this is a big thank you, but it really is shaped in my 27 years going into my 28th at Churchill High School. We're a lot of here today. That would be Kristen Casada, Casey Conway, who's our athletic director, who's working. They're always working so hard. Jeff Burnside, my new colleague, Todd Kalmbach, Nicole Hunter. And then there's another guy, he's out of the district for the moment, that would be Joe Anderson. His collaboration, camaraderie, and unwavering support, they've really been instrumental as an educator and my growth as an administrator. So I thank them, certainly. Over the last several years, we've worked together and we forged a really good friendship. My newest colleague, I definitely want to give a shout out to, that would be Nicole Graziano. Her dedication in education, her enthusiasm are second to none. It's made my transition so smooth. I am beyond excited to work with her, and it's really going to shape the future of Emerson Middle School. And again, to the incredible middle school staff that I've got to meet already. Their commitment speaks volumes, their dedication and pride. I have met them already. It was early August. I was like, what are you doing? But they're really a great staff, and I can't wait to soar again together to new heights. My biggest thank you to my family. That would be my wife and my daughter, Jenna, who could be here with me tonight. They've always supported me in all aspects of my life, two of the strongest women I've ever known. Emerson Middle School and Livonia Public Schools really do truly hold a special place in my heart. So this opportunity to continue to serve this remarkable community fills me with excitement. Today, together, we'll foster an environment where students thrive, where they learn, they grow into capable and compassionate individuals coming out of this district. So as we stand at the brink of a new school year, and I thought we had 2 weeks, but she reminded me it's just next week. I'm filled with excitement, with enthusiasm. I'm eager to lead Emerson Middle School to continue to those new heights of success. So thank you to each and every one of you for your support, your trust, your warm welcome. Let us fly on this exciting journey together. We'll make a lasting imprint and lives of our students. So thank you.
Wonderful.
Do you want to add anything, Mrs.
Sure, I
Eckert?
would love to.
Don't go away, Bruce.
You certainly must not be surprised that Bruce is absolutely the right person at the right time. He is the right leader for Emerson Middle School. He has been a leader, as Mr. Abate has said, throughout his time as a student, as an educator, as a leader within our school district, and he consistently shows up. He shows up for his colleagues, he shows up for this district, for our schools, and most of all, he shows up for our students. And that's what he is ready to do. As you can tell, his enthusiasm is there. He has such a passion for leading, for learning. He is a continuous learner. He is like a sponge, and we cannot wait to see him get started with our students at Emerson. Congratulations, Bruce.
Any comments from my colleagues? Mrs. Burton?
Yes, I am thrilled. Bruce, I know you and I have known one another for a number of years, and when I heard that your name was coming across as the recommended person for this position, I literally said, yes, just thrilled. Some of the traits that I really think are so very, very valuable, especially in this position, is your absolute dedication to students, which is unwavering, and your calm, steady demeanor. You are unflappable. And having raised kiddos, middle schoolers can try to flap people. But having you in this position with the background that you have in middle school, in the leadership experiences that you've had, and combined with your personality, I think is just an absolute fabulous combination. Just so excited to see you in this position at Emerson. Congratulations. And honestly, congratulations to Livonia Public Schools, because I think it's fabulous.
Anyone else? Mrs. Frank?
I just want to say thank you, too, for all your efforts for Churchill. Thank you for the input that you've had on that school. You have brought so much to the district overall, but especially to that school and your role there. And so you will be greatly missed, but we're really excited for what you're going to do with Emerson. So we're thrilled for you and so excited to see what the future holds.
Thank you.
Anything else? I can't echo Mrs. Burton's comment greater, but I can see the excitement on your face. That says it all. And thank you for being willing to take over this role. All right. It is. You're going to soar. You're going to soar. Okay, thank you. Again, congratulations.
And I know Bruce acknowledged all of you, but thank you so much to all of you who came out to support Bruce this evening and to be here tonight. It means so much to see so many supportive and, helpful and friendly faces in the crowd. So thank you for being here.
Want to take a break? Take a short break? Sure. We'll take a 5-minute break. Yeah. Thank you for that indulgence, and we are back, and we'll move on to item 3, our Building and Site Committee, and I'll turn it over to Mrs. Burton.
Thank you. First item on our agenda this evening is 3A Bond and Sinking Fund Update, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Francis.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Brian Weber, Plant Moran Cressa, is going to join us at the table for the first two, actually, presentations. The first one, you're going to get the packet handed out to you. It is the same as we went over at the study session, and we'll also have it up on the screen for both here in, oh, there you go, both in here in the room, and the folks at home can follow along with this as well.
Thanks, man. Yes.
Yeah, I'm struggling with the printing. Okay, so this is really an item that we wanted to bring to the board. We had an in-depth conversation about it at the study session. We won't go quite as far down those rabbit holes today. We want to just be able to give that overview again for the board and for the folks who might be watching at home. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Weber, and we'll kind of just have a little conversation, kind of update you on the slides, and if you have a question, stop us at that point. You don't have to wait to the end. Just, interrupt us, and if you have a question, and we'll see if we can get you the answer to that.
Sounds good.
Alrighty. Well, thank you for having me again this evening. Just be prepared, it is a dashboard update night as well, so I think this is 2 times in a row. There's a crowd there that seem to leave when they find out a dashboard report's coming, but there is some duplicate information here. So our quarterly dashboard update is a snapshot, a little bit of an update with the bond. This is just a supplement to it, a little bit more info. So I'll try not to repeat myself, but we'll hit both of them throughout the process here.
Sounds good.
Starting with the presentation. So goals and objectives, same as on the dashboard. This is what was on the bond proposal, reminding what our goals and focus of the bond program was. Why did we do it? Benefits of the bond and then the cost. Just so a high-level reminder, it was a $186 million bond program. It was a 20-year millage for no new tax increase at the time. So a lot of needs still that were not addressed in the 2013 bond that were identified in our capital needs report, our 10-year capital plan that were included in this bond program. Touching a little bit on the next slide of scope of the work that were the main focal points of this bond. Library and media centers, we continue starting last summer, rolling through this summer, and we have a couple summers left of doing library and media centers, kitchen upgrades, restroom renovations, air conditioning in the classrooms, and then interior doors and hardware for safety and security upgrades. We're touching all the buildings for that as well.
Just going to jump in real quick. As the summer of '23 work starts to wind down and they're sprinting to that finish line, boy, we went out and looked at some of the spaces in those library media centers. It's just completely different than they were, and super excited. The principal and assistant principal of Frost was here. Their building's being done, and we walked with Mrs. Wheeler, the principal, the other day. She just kept talking about that library media center, how excited they were for it, and their media specialist is also very excited for it. So just a couple of things, and then we've been working hard on the classroom air conditioning. I know we had a conversation at the last meeting. Are those intended to be done for the start of school? Yes, they are intended to be done. Just like anything that you literally have hundreds upon hundreds of, I would not be surprised if there's some maintenance glitches here and there in different places and different spaces. That happens and occurs with many, many things across the school year, and when you have as many facilities, as many classrooms, as many items, that's bound to happen. But the generally speaking, the plan is for all of them to be ready, fired up, and working for the beginning of the school year.
Good.
Before you guys go on, could I jump in? Backing up to the library media centers, we've had a lot of conversations with it as a board, but for those who may be listening from home, can you either one of you give just a brief summary of the updates and how we're bringing those really into current time?
Yeah, in all of them, there's going to be many similarities because we have some base items that we want to put into each of the library media centers, whether they're a K-4 building up to a high school building. And then from building to building, you're going to see unique features. That's more of the design element. Let's do something a little bit different here versus that building, just so they're not all cookie cutter. But generally speaking, we are putting in an idea factory, K through 8th grade. In those buildings, Idea Factory is what we're calling, what most people would say, a makerspace or that STEM area for students. We're putting into all of the library media centers at all levels a flexible classroom, and it has what's called, it's the brand name of it, it's a nano wall, and that wall is a glass wall, but is in panels, so it can be opened up all the way, folding up kind of accordion style, or you can close it off, and that's another space that can be used by the media specialist, by other teachers, can be used by the principal. If they have a staff meeting, you can open up those doors, folks can spill out of there. That room is loaded up just like any classroom. It's got the whiteboard, the short throw, interactive short throw. It's got the PA system, the speaker system, the microphone system, et cetera, et cetera. Of course, we have libraries, so we have books, and each of them are set up uniquely as to where their book stacks are. Some of them are in one area, sort of this designated space. As we see Franklin open up, you'll notice when you visit, they're going to have one general area that's going to have its, its hardcovers and softcovers, its book shelves. That opens up other areas for spaces that students can collaborate together, can kind of just sit down in whether it be a soft seating and do a little work if they've got some time, or talk with friends. We've got tables and spaces that they can work with other students, et cetera, et cetera. So those are some of the features that we see in each of the spaces. A K4 obviously looks drastically different than a high school that we're doing, just because of the amount of space that we have. But at an elementary school, they definitely work in the design phase to carve out some spaces where at a K4, they want to have the youngest children have a space that they can sit on the floor and have the reading time and the story time with the teacher, a space where the teachers, because at the elementary level, as we know, that's one of the specials. The teachers bring students in and have class with them each day. So there's just a little bit different vibe in those areas than you'll see at a Frost, an Emerson, a Franklin, et cetera. A little bit more of the older students being able to work together in one-off spaces versus whole groups. And just generally speaking, trying to get a flow that inspires students to learn. And it's not just about books, but it's also not just about technology. It's about a culmination of all of those items that we can have: small group, large group, reading time, alone time, et cetera.
Thank you.
Did you want to?
No, the only thing I was going to say about the books, you did a great job describing that, and that really captures so much of what the feedback from our media specialists, from our principals, from the users of that space, those collaborative areas, those reading nooks, but also visual things like the sight lines. All of the book stacks are only to a certain height, so that our media specialists have visual control of the entire space, from their office and the way the office was designed and the way it was oriented. And then, the height of the book stack, so you can see across the area. In general, they are clustered together for the most part, depending. We have some unique spaces, but for the most part, those book stacks are clustered together. And then, as Mr. Francis said, that flexible classroom, we're really eager to see how that can be used, not just for students, but it's really intended to be a place for professional development as well. When that nano wall is open, we then have tables and chairs that can end up seating anywhere from 50 to 60 to 70 people, utilizing both the flex classroom and then into the media center. And beyond that, just some of the stylistic elements, I really think, is what will be the wow. Some of the lighting features, some of the light fixtures, the colors that have been chosen, the carpets, the wall paint, just the little, I don't remember what they called the little pads that the students sit on in the younger.
I call them lily pads.
Lily pads.
Lily pads, okay. And they really all come together in a way that I think you'll see very intentional design, that it draws you in. You want to be there. There are comfortable spaces, but it's also very purposefully designed for learning and for collaboration. So I think our community and our kids are going to be wowed when they go in the new media centers this year.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. To continue on to the list, touch base on a couple other of the major programs. Robotics Center, as you guys have toured in previous months. They are wrapping up this fall. Finishes are racing through right now. It is a completely different space, a great addition to the Career Tech Center. So sooner than later, we'll be giving another tour there once we get that polished up and all the finishes in there. And then the Early Childhood Center. Once again, we have a tour plan, I believe, with you guys in early October, but we are now roughed in, putting exterior walls up, or roof systems actually going on that new addition now. So that's all prepping for a fall of 2024 turnover. So they're making good progress out there right now. Information technology, so this is a refresh of mobile learning devices, classroom technology, infrastructure, surveillance systems we also have included in the bond program. And then wrapping up furniture, we have upgraded the staff furniture in all the classrooms. So teaching spaces, mobile podiums, new desks for all teaching staff, and also have now upgraded the administrative principal's offices in schools.
I was going to jump in and say that, and the principals and assistant principals and the folks who have been getting that new furniture have really been excited. We were with all of them this past week on Wednesday, but even before that, as some of them were going in, I was getting emails and texts from folks who were just really happy, saying like, it's beautiful, I love it, you know, I've never really had anything new like this for my furniture, I'm super excited, etc. So that's, thus far, it's really been quite a bit of positive response, and nothing I've yet to get. I've had a couple of just questions of, can I this or can I that? But beyond that, it's been like, wow, I can't believe that, you know, I've got this new setup in here, and it's just nice that the teachers have it, the staffing, the teaching staff have it, and now the administrators, and we want to continue to kind of work through with some of those things.
And last with furniture was touch with Phil and Andrea's description of LMCs. We've also co-designed furniture with those spaces. It was not reusing what was there and trying to fit into that. So that was also in consideration, mentioned with the lily pads, but furniture, mobile furniture being designed within those spaces is also included. And then wrapping up at site improvements, so playground equipment replacement was actually one of the first projects that was tackled to kick off the bond program. Those are now complete, and then buses and maintenance equipment will be staggered throughout the whole bond program, refreshing as needed.
And a sneak peek, that's one of the agenda items a little bit later on this evening, is talk about buses.
Next up, we're going to roll into a budget update. This will coincide with the dashboard report, but kind of want to paint the picture of, we were in front of the board maybe a year and a half ago, providing a breakout of what was inclusive of the $186 million in the bond program. It's not $186 million of construction, so a little bit of a breakout between facility improvements and new educational opportunities is the construction, and then it rolls into the IT, the site improvements and furniture that we isolate from the design and construction portion of it. So this is our snapshot. The first two line items totaling about $140 million there. There is professional fees in there. There's architects, construction managers in there. So as a baseline, we're looking at about we were looking at $110 million within there of actual hard construction that was planned for the initial bond program back in 2020, 2021. So using this information, we wanted to flip through and show some of the work that's been going on. It seemed to be every time I was sitting in front of this group, we were letting you know that we were over on construction costs. We were working in a owner's contingency, and it's been the process for the full bond program. It was not a surprise. I believe everybody's aware of inflation going on in the world right now. The construction market was hit worse than what you would hear in the news. It was focused based on supply and demand. So as you can see in the slide, we've gathered information internally from CRESA, from other districts, other construction projects in the area, not only here on the west side of the state, and came to the conclusion that our projects were hit between 40 and 60% of cost escalation starting from 2020. So that's the time we were budgeting this bond program, selling our first series in 2021, locking in our architect and construction manager, and prices continue to escalate month by month throughout this. So a couple of them are, as a general snapshot, previous to 2020, we're capturing about $275 per square foot for a new building. That's over $400 a foot now. So everything we budgeted at that $275 at the time, we are now in a 40 to 60% rut before we break ground on a job. So there's been a lot of adapting. We'll talk through some numbers in some later slides. But it's also a sign of how busy it is. There's been federal money pumped into some programs Well, it's just not our district, it's other districts in southeast Michigan.
It's not just districts. It's
Yes, in other entities as well. So this area with workers, labor costs have gone up, material prices have gone up. We've had to adapt the whole way through to understand how we're going to manage this and try not to cut scope from this program, but also understand that we cannot spend what we don't have. So it's been a juggling act for a year plus now.
I think this slide is both a good visual, but the numbers jump out at you as well. The next slide is also a pretty good visual
Yes.
of just of the volatility
Yes.
in markets and how they've broken down.
So this is a snapshot of material costs
Sorry.
through the PPI, which is the Producer Price Index. That's just a general form of showing what prices are across the board. As you can see, it is volatile, as Phil had mentioned. So it was pretty interesting, every bid package that we were putting out of what the results were going to be. It was kind of an unknown at the time.
And generally, when you do one project, like we're now designing the third year's worth, and usually you can just say, like, well, when we were in a building that was similarly sized and we did X, Y, and Z, the cost that we spent last year or the year before was X, we should be able to expect that again. But when you have something that's bouncing up and down constantly, it's more difficult to make those predictions.
Yeah, it's highlighting a few of them. So we have asphalt was up 78%, peaking at one point over, essentially doubling in price. Same with lumber. There was a peak in '21. So everything we were monitoring at the time, it was kind of a guessing game, but we have now settled down. We're back to some normalcy here. We're still seeing prices go up, but it's not as volatile as it's been the last few years, so that's some good news.
And during that time, we not only continued to look at the overall projects, but we also tempered a bit of the pace we were at with things like some of the paving, some of the roofing.
That is
because
correct.
of these costs that were truly 3 and 4 times what they were at the start of the bond. And so, as you know, we remained on pace to continue that work, but we really took a look at what was most needed, focused on that, and then decided to hold for a bit until prices started to regulate. And I think that was really a wise decision.
Absolutely. So rolling into the next slide, cost escalation is a normalcy in our world. It's just a matter of how you plan for it and what's usually expected. In this bond program, we had 3% annually planned for in the bond, just as a contingency within it. Obviously, with the 40 to 60% cost increases, that goes away pretty quick. So we just want to highlight some of the other things that we've been working on the last couple of years, understanding that 3% is not going to cover it. What else can we look at to do some savings? Professional procurement service or service procurement. This is just a matter of making sure we get the right people to the right table. When we had our construction managers, our architects, it was not a negotiation. It was essentially a competitively bid. We brought in a handful of each, understood them not being negotiated. We could save percentage points on those services, which over $110 million, a couple points means a lot and goes a long way. As I mentioned, we did have an escalation contingency. We also set aside an owner contingency. That's just a secondary safety net that was in place that we always have just in case something goes wrong. Scope refinement. This is another one. As we were walking buildings with the construction team, we had budgets initially set. Walk the building. Is that really necessary? Do we need to go the full breadth of what we had anticipated? Is there ways to refine it, still not lose scope or an improvement, but smarter, more efficient ways to do it? So that was considered throughout each of the buildings that we had walked without trying to avoid or without cutting scope from those buildings. And then also expedited construction phasing. Each year with that escalation, if we can reel in and pull ahead more construction work, we're avoiding that escalation in the following years. And we've expedited a lot of work in this bond program, and it's been a heavy 2 years. But it's paying off in the millions of dollars by not letting it drag out a few more years. So all in all, these figures here just on this page alone, we estimate between $30 and $35 million of savings are realized just by focusing on these and a couple other smaller items as part of the way to mitigate some of those overages. Now the interesting part. So even with that $30, $35 million savings, this is working through multiple spreadsheets, meeting biweekly or monthly with the administrative team, understanding that wasn't going to solve all the problems. We ran through all those options and still we're realizing a $14 million overage was headed our way that we need to plan for now and not wait till the end of the bond program. So understanding that $14 million is there, we're not getting any more money out of the bond, what else can we do? So we will look to major categories of earned interest. The market has changed for us now to the positive, that the money that's invested is making good interest in that bank account. And then also sourcing other funds, working with Ms. Smith and her team, what other funds are available to the district that we can look at with capital funds, food service funds, and then also going outside of that, looking at safety grants through the state or through federal, ESSER funds for federal, that we were able to capitalize on some technology purchases that we could then pull that from our technology budget and use towards construction. And then realizing any unused construction cost. Last year from our summer renovations, we were close to $1 million that was unused in construction contingency. So that goes right back into our owner contingency that we can reapply to future projects. So within those earned, our $14 million was covered. These items alone do cover that 14, so we're whole again.
Mrs. Burton? I just wanted to, just touch base on that. When you look at a $14 million overage for our budget, I think we talked about it last week in our study session, so we had a lot of discussion about this. This is not the first time we're hearing about it, as opposed to anybody in the public wondering why there's not more questions when we see this. And I think the other thing about, so we have talked about it at our last study session. The other thing I wanted to say was I think the funding sources that you used were really, they were for construction. They're all construction. We're not taking money out of the classroom for this. The capital projects is for capital projects. They're all building funds that we're pulling from. And so it's, so it was really wise and innovative in terms of where we pulled the money from to ensure that what we're doing with the bond is meeting the needs and meeting the goals of what we had originally. And so I just think it's important to say what you pulled from were things like safety grant that is for safety issues, and that's what we used for doors and different
Cameras.
safety items, yes. And so it's not that we were just pulling things out of nowhere, but it really was what they were intended for, so that we could use this to supplement the bond.
You actually make a good point. I kind of skimmed through it, but the food service fund, that money wasn't just put into a random pocket of money. We had new food service equipment, serving lines, refrigerators, and all that kitchen equipment. That was a one-for-one. We understood what the costs were on that project and transferred it. It was just not a grab from that and dumped into the bond. So thank you for clarifying. That's a good point that I kind of glazed over.
Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Mrs. Burton. Brian, looking at what is titled projected budget overage, is that throughout the bond, or are we talking today?
That is today, but forecasting against future projects for 24, 25, to our best guess that we can forecast based on what we've seen. There was additional monies, so our base scope or budget for a 24 or 25 project at X dollars, we then added a percentage to it and came to that 14,000. So as long as there's no surprises, we think we're in the right ballpark to finish through the balance of the projects ahead of us as well.
Okay.
Yep.
That does forecast the
Okay.
increased
Yeah, I just
costs
wanted to
and
make sure, we're
escalation.
not talking about 14 million today.
Nope.
And then it's gonna go up.
And then it's gonna go up. This is projected through the course of the bond.
That is correct.
Okay,
But
great,
but it's also a great transition to the next slide as well.
Yeah, and you didn't
Yes.
even pay me for that.
So on our next slide is what happens if something goes haywire again, escalation continues to rise. There's unforeseens that arise in the next couple of years here. There's also additional funding sources that we know we can tap into that is above and beyond that $14 million. So future earned interest, we know there's potential there. We didn't want to grab anything we don't have in the bank yet, so we have not acknowledged any of that in the $14 million. Future capital project funds, same thing as before, future food service funds, future grants, and then future unused construction contingencies. Conservatively, we think there's $7 to $10 million that we could hopefully gain from those if everything goes as projected.
Any other questions?
All right. And then finishing up, next slide would be a progress update. We'll do a quick run through. We've touched on quite a few of these already, but just as a kind of snapshot for everybody at home. The 2022 projects, so our first year in the program, we renovated 5 buildings total. It was Coolidge, Kennedy, Randolph, Cooper, and Emerson, and those were the LMCs, the kitchens, the restrooms that we had talked about. And then we also took a portion of the district the goal was to get air conditioning complete in the first 2 years. To achieve that, we needed to go beyond those renovations, go only in classrooms, teaching spaces, We didn't touch the LMCs in the following buildings, knowing we'd return later, but the goal was to get the air conditioning in the classroom. So last summer, we were in Grant, Hayes, Hoover, Johnson, Holmes, Riley, and Churchill doing air conditioning upgrades in the teaching spaces. And then also a little bit of clarification for anybody that may not know. Project 1 and Project 2, that is a reference to how we initially broke out the bond program when hiring construction management and architectural services. So Project 1 is the renovation or any upgrades in existing buildings. Project 2 is inclusive of robotics and the Early Childhood Center. So that's the reference to Project 2. So robotics addition, we had chatted that's wrapping up this fall. And then moving into 2023 projects are 5 renovations for this year that are ongoing right now. Rosedale Elementary, Cleveland Elementary, Riley Upper, Frost Middle School, and then Franklin High School. And then additionally, we had 3 remaining schools that did not have air conditioning in classrooms. So it was Roosevelt Elementary, Webster Elementary, Stevenson High, and then also, as mentioned before, the Early Childhood Center. Rolling into 2024, we are already deep into the design process for that. The goal is to bid that out this fall, and we'll be in front of the board with recommendations for contractors later this year. So we have renovations planned for Hoover Elementary, Hayes Elementary, Roosevelt Elementary, Holmes Middle School, and Stevenson High School. So that is our look ahead to next year as well. Touch base on a little bit of information technology updates. Libraries and media centers concurrently, when we're renovating those spaces, we're putting new technology in it, working with Tim Clan and his team. Mobile devices have been refreshed to date, and then they are currently installing the security cameras throughout the district. They've been out there for a couple months now, going throughout the district.
Do you want to talk for a minute about that, Mr. Francis? Just about the clarity and
Yeah, the security cameras.
enhancements of that.
The security cameras, it's a completely different system than what we had previously. We have just pure numbers-wise, more cameras, both interior and exterior, and you can cover more space based on the types of cameras we have in some spaces. So it's not always one camera hitting one direction. We do have cameras that can be in multiple directions. We have a higher megapixel, more ability to zoom in and have clarity. We have ability to have audio. We have the ability to catch things, or not catch things, but look at things on our phones, on our desktops, multiple ways. It's really a powerful system. The principals have walked and worked with the folks at IDS and our IT department as they go in through the buildings. IDS had sat down, that's our consultants from the IT arm, and they put through on a map everywhere they said they thought should be covered in a kind of a perfect world as they look at it. We went to the buildings, walked it with them, and the principals also would say, like, wow, this is covered more than I even thought it would be. But knowing their buildings, there's times where they say, you know what, that spot over there is something that actually is a hot spot for us sometimes. And so, okay, we can make that adjustment. We had contingency there. We either could move a camera or replace a camera to maybe shoot in a couple of different directions, or just flat out add an additional camera somewhere. That's been very important for us to make sure that we know that we're covering the spaces that we need to. Now, you're never going to get, obviously, every nook, every cranny, everything, but we have cameras that now are shooting at parking lots and at playgrounds that we didn't have in the past. So it's really an upgrade, both, like I said, in just sheer number, but the quality and what we can glean from them is better than the previous setup as well. So I know that building administrators are very pleased with the system, and actually using it is not very difficult. Like, the interface is pretty easy to run through on the base level.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Bill. Furniture, I won't repeat, we've touched base, a lot of progress has happened with furniture. Bond sales, just a snapshot, our Series 1 was sold in June of 2021, so there were $78 million that hit those deposits in the account we've been working from, and then we actually have the Series 2 was sold in June of 2023 for another $62 million. So cash flow-wise, we're doing really well, and no concerns there right now for any of the ongoing work. Lastly, as a progress update, just want to get through communication, just know that we're still talking, trying to be as transparent as possible with not only the board, the community. So continue to make monthly committee meeting updates. Our dashboard updates are quarterly. And then also, rolling in the next slide is a program governance. There was one initially set up during we had one for the 2013 bond. It was updated for the kickoff of our 2021 bond. However, through the process, it's been a while, there's always ways to improve. We were talking through some of the processes. So there's a couple items that were, I'd say, overhauled a little bit just for clarity and take out any ambiguity or questions that may have come up throughout the process. So focusing on two of those are the procurement of services. Between professional services, construction, and then furniture and IT equipment, there's 3 different sets of rules that you can abide by for those. So we took the effort to actually break those out in the document. It's a longer document now, but it clarifies those rules, protocols, limits of authority, and everything that deals with those 3 specific sections. So that's something we did provide, I believe, at the study session or following the study session. So if there's any questions, I can ask or answer that. But it's more of our team working, making sure that there are processes for procurement, for setting contracts, for change orders, invoicing, the whole kit and caboodle. There's a defined program and rules for everything that we're working on. And then the other big update to that document is, before it was specifically related to the bond, we've now included the sinking fund. It's another big capital program. We're between $7 and $8 million annually on that, so it's not a small amount. So just to make it clear, and same rules to play by in the sinking fund, we've also added that to confirm that we follow the same process for sinking fund as well.
And one of the, really, when it comes down to the heart of the matter, one of the reasons we wanted to get the updates on the governance document was not just for clarity for us who are here working with it and for the board to have that transparency, but ultimately for future board members, for future folks who work with Plant Moran Cressa, for Livonia Public Schools, whatever that may be. We wanted to codify it, make sure that it was clear. When it's furniture, you handle it like this. When it's this amount of a change order, you handle it like that. And while we knew what we were doing, the next person then can have that document. The next new board member can have that clarity. So we wanted to just make sure it was all just laid out.
All right, we're in the last section. The last part is a sinking fund update, just continuing that theme. So internally, we continue updating a 10-year capital plan. Within that, it's not just what needs may be in the bond, but also that sinking fund program. So we're going to highlight some of the major projects that we've been working on previously, and then also looking ahead to future years of what's on the radar of what the program may need to address. Starting with roofing projects, it's been a priority. There's close to 3 million square feet of roofing in the district, so that's an ongoing need that we're trying to chip away at year by year, create a new cycle, making sure they're not getting past the useful life and creating multiple maintenance issues that come alongside that. So this year, we actually did a portion of Stevenson High School that they're wrapping up next week. If you've been through the parking lot, you saw it was quite full at one point, but a lot of that is now up on the roof and installed. And then Kennedy Elementary was a full replacement. They have completed that work as of 2 to 3 weeks ago. So Kennedy's roof is now buttoned up as well. And then looking ahead to next year, Franklin High School, once again, it's almost apples to apples with Stevenson. Of a portion of that roof is beyond its life, a lot of maintenance calls, so we have that prepped for bidding this fall as well. And then Cleveland Elementary, this is working with RTA, with Mr. Lau and his staff in the maintenance department, but it arose with a lot of needs, and there's a lot of maintenance calls out there, so we've actually pulled that one ahead to make sure that we can get a new roof on that for next summer is the goal. And then moving into 25, this is where there may be some movement, but we do have some schools on the radar now, making sure we're staying ahead of it and have some designs ready to go, just in case something does come up and there's a need to go. We have that document ready, but also if we get understanding from Mr. Lau and his team that there's more trouble at another school, we still have time to adapt and can adjust accordingly. Paving projects, we were for 3 to 4 years replacing a couple parking lots or making improvements to parking lots. We put that on pause just to the needs of the roof took priority. Understanding pricing was going a little haywire as well in the asphalt. So We have re-engaged NTH. They're currently doing an assessment of the district. Similar to the roofing maps that we present, the colored maps of buildings, we're now engaging them to try and tackle the same thing with parking lots. Understanding what we've touched in previous designs in the last 5 years, but also what has not been touched. What can we look ahead for the next few years so we're not getting surprised and caught off guard for failing parking lots or anything that needs improvements or maintenance to it is also going to be captured in the report. Boiler projects, we're actually wrapping this up. This is our final year of boiler, so it's been a heck of a project for the last, I believe it's going on since 2017, little by little throughout the district. So Cass Elementary and Nijit Euro are the final two in the district, and then,
Very successful program, high energy efficiency, high energy savings.
yep. Yep, so you see that falls off for 24 and 25. Athletics projects, Franklin tennis courts are getting surfaced this week, so by next week.
Looking good back there.
Yeah, the tennis courts will be ready for use starting next week. And then we also, I just saw some in the back parking lot, we received scoreboards for high school baseball, softball are sitting on the property now. It's just a matter of getting them installed, so that's good news as well. Looking forward to athletics, we have not defined anything yet, but we know there are potential needs at some of the fields. So we've put a placeholder there, understanding there's going to be a lot of discussions, understanding where the need are, but there will be some potential projects for the athletics moving forward as well. And then lastly is capital projects. These are some of the larger projects that are one-offs, water mains, abatement, building demolition. So we've highlighted a few there. Mr. Lau has also started tackling some of the gym lighting upgrades as one-off mini projects that are the right size where an electrician and an engineer can handle that as a in and out, aside from the bond program. Very efficient way to tackle these projects. And if you've seen the gyms after he's
Yeah.
upgraded, it is
Also
a stark
successful.
difference. Yeah, it's
We have,
Night
we
and
have,
day.
yeah, we have literally more like night and day and PE teachers who want to wear sunglasses in their gymnasium. But it's good. The LED
Yeah.
upgrades are great for our energy efficiency and much better lighting.
Yeah. And then the last one, looking forward to Stevenson has some site work on site for some stormwater detention, but that's kind of a catch-all category. If there's one-off capital projects, we keep an eye on and look ahead to.
I had passed out the one-pager for the quarterly dashboard. Before we move on to that, does anybody have anything for the presentation that Mr. Weber just went through?
Just on the, just an observation, I was by LCTC, and it's got the LCTC
Yeah.
up now.
Oh, it
That
does.
In the metal panels.
That you can see from Newburgh. It just, it looks wonderful.
Yeah, it's a stark difference out there.
Yeah.
And the face of that building is entirely different.
Yeah.
Entirely different.
It's amazing.
I can't wait to see it.
Mrs.
The
Bradford.
brick stainless.
Thank you, Mrs. Burton. Brian, I just wanted to thank you and your team for the update. This is just so wonderful for not only us to take a look at and reevaluate, but for our community, people who are watching can really garner a lot of information out of this document, which I think is so important because it's our voters who graciously voted in this bond for us, and we really appreciate, and it just can be seen district-wide in every building. You can just see how wonderful the upgrades are, and I just want the public to know how thankful we are, our district is, and these updates really just are great to show the transparency and what we're really working on, so I appreciate that.
Well, thank you very much. And it has been a heavy lift for the last couple of years. It's been a team effort with administration, with the board, and you guys understanding we are coming sometimes with overages and trust that we have a plan in place, and that plan's been working. So it's been a team effort, and we appreciate your team as well for everything.
Mrs. Acosta.
Thank you, Mrs. Burton. I just wanted to add, kind of echo what Ms. Frank was saying earlier, and that we appreciate that everything that you guys are doing to maintain the original scope of the bond projects and not sacrificing what we committed to our community. So, thank you.
Appreciate that. Yep.
I would just like to add again, and we have said it before, and this won't be the last time, but we really appreciate the partnership that we have with CRESA. LPS knows education like none other, if from everything that I have seen over all these years. But we are not construction experts, and you folks are. But combining your construction knowledge with our education knowledge into one team has made this project so much more efficient. And looking at the last bond rolling right into this one, but we are so thankful for that partnership. I would highly recommend any school district that's entertaining any kind of significant renovations utilize services of yours. Our partnership with CRESA has been very valuable in terms of helping us plan major bond work like we have, and how to work together with us in mitigating some of these strange costs that have come along. I mean, they came along before this last few years. You know, we'd hit bumps, and you guys would know of efficiencies that we could utilize that we just simply did not know about. And certainly over these last couple of years, it has been a lifesaver. But again, thank you for your partnership with our team, because together we've gotten through a whole lot of really significant work and some very strange bumps. But we're still able, like, as it's been said, to accomplish what we're setting out to do. So again, thank you for your partnership with us.
Well, thank you very much. That's greatly appreciated. All right, we ready for the good old dashboard now?
Yep,
We are
we're
ready,
ready.
All righty.
if not eager.
Yeah, if not eager. Well, I'll skip through. So, top left, the goals and the objectives of the bond. I won't have to repeat. That's what we talked about. Same thing we were focused on when it was sold, and we continue to focus on those. We'll scoot down to the critical items list without repeating myself. A lot of this focus on what's the market doing right now. We're obviously in the middle of the summer renovation, making sure we're hitting our end dates there, and then also tracking our robotics and early childhood finish dates. Those are our main focus right now. Program phasing, this is just touching base as our bid packages are. If they've not been presented to you, the future one's coming out. So our phase one is the robotics, that's the construction, soon to be in the closeout phase. And then we roll into our 2023 renovations, early childhood center. And then what's coming at later in this meeting is a door and hardware upgrade package that was put out to bid, and we're looking for a recommendation on that. And then rolling into next year's 2024 renovations, we are in the middle of a design phase. Hopefully in the fall we see that with contractors. Jumping over to the cost summary, I will give as usual, a high level, just a explanation of each one of these columns, just in case it's the first time anybody's hearing it. But this is a snapshot of our $186 million bond program. This is extracted from our software program, eBuilder, that tracks all budgets, actual costs, and financially monitors the bond program from start to finish. Current budget is exactly that of how much money is in each one of the categories to the left. Current contracts and purchase orders. This is anything that's been brought in front of the board or any miscellaneous purchase orders that are signed and fully executed. Column C is actuals paid off of those signed contracts and purchase orders. Remaining cost to complete is just math of the full contract value versus what's been paid to date. E is forecasted contracts and purchase orders. So these are 24, 25, any other miscellaneous projects down the road. We don't have contracts yet, but we know they're coming, so we track them in column E. Column F is an unallocated reserve. We're currently, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, our contingency is $1.975 million. So that's some of the workings of what we went through the last presentation. There's funds that are currently moving around, whether we capture that from the contingency of last year or other funds available. We've set aside $1.9 million. Knowing that, yes, we have a $14 million issue, but we can't go into it at exactly $14 million. We always leave that cushion for flexibility as we work through some of these programs. And then the last column is just a $0 to show that we are not forecasting over or under at this point. Working with everything we're doing with the outside funding, we're tracking, we can make it there. Going down to the table below for cash flow finances, this is just a snapshot of Series 1, Series 2, how much was received in the bank essentially, how much have we spent for actuals earned, and then what remains in our bank accounts. Really tying between the two tables, column C, actuals paid, is the $61 million. You see that drags down to the actuals paid in the table below, just showing that those two numbers are tying out. Very high level, this is a lot of numbers there, a lot of data. The big change from the last time I was in front of you a couple months ago, our actuals paid last time I was in front of you was about $39 million. We're now at 61, so we've spent 20-some million since the last time, so that's the big one. And then the next time we're ahead of you, we get more contracts, that'll adjust those contract values, but that's everything in a nutshell right now.
Sounds good. Any questions? All right. We can move on to the next item. Item C, door and hardware package. Mr. Weber, are you going to be staying with us for the writing
I do get to
process,
stay
or
for this
are-
one.
Yeah. So we've been mentioning this, I think, several times, and Mr. Weber actually mentioned it again just a few minutes ago. This is something that we came up with, the hardware in the doors and doors themselves when they need replacing. Generally speaking, we would do that when we design and then go in and do renovation construction inside the buildings in each summer. However, we put our heads together and said, well, we're talking quite a bit about safety, security, trying to finish off quite a bit of changes in locks. That's when we say the hardware for folks at home. When we say door hardware, we're really talking about the handles and/or lock, and specifically the locking mechanism. So we said, let's just put a package together, bring it all forward, and go to the buildings that we haven't gotten to and that we won't get to until a couple of years down the road, and just work on those spaces. And that's the type of work that's actually good to relieve a little bit of pressure with that valve, to say this work can be done during fall, during winter. Summers are so tight with these companies. They do school work, and they all bid on the same packages. And they all work like crazy over the summer to get things done before students and staff arrive. Let's do a little bit of work when that's technically the off-season, right? Yeah. So, in that downtime. So, to that end, we went through the buildings and we put together a comprehensive package for doors, hardware, and some construction at Niji Aero Elementary for putting in some framing and doors in some of those spaces. Quick history for those folks who are unaware: that building was built at a time in the style of an open concept elementary school, and over the years walls have been put up just because styles change. People they want a little bit more privacy in their rooms, sound attenuation, etc. So at this point, we're sort of finishing that off, if you will, with framing out and then putting doors and then the hardware that goes with the doors, meaning that they can have a locked space in those classrooms. So that's the general gist of this project. We put it out for bid. We did have four respondents, apologies. The two that we interviewed, of the two, Wally Kosorski is the company that we are recommending. While they are not by the pure dollar amount the low bidder, they are the low responsible bidder, in the sense that this is a company that's been in our buildings. They've been doing the door hardware. They know our buildings. They know the product. They have a long history, and they have a history with LPS. So we would recommend Wally Kosorski to the board for this particular project. We're very comfortable with them, and we know that they know our buildings and our work. Did you want to add anything to that standpoint?
No, yes, a very trusted company currently working in the district. Only thing to add is on page 3, there is a budget snapshot. We were right within budget, within $6,000 of our budget, actually. So this is an iterative process that we had reviewed a couple buildings a few times, went back and forth to finalize that package. But this was money set aside within our budgets of what would come forth in that renovation. We're just pulling that money ahead as well. So these would come out of each one of those individual building line items ahead of their typical renovation.
So ultimately, with contingency, we have $811,971 that we would bring to the voting meeting, to the board for approval, and that would include the contingency.
Okay. Any questions on this item? Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, President Burton, and Mrs. Burton. Old habits are hard to break. This includes the hardware, the doors.
It's a lot of hardware. It's also literally doors when needed, and it also includes the construction of framing out for the doors and the doors and hardware themselves in Niji Aero. And that's really a large chunk of work that we would have to do there. It's just a unique one-off, as opposed to just getting hardware.
Okay, the only reason I ask is that the one paragraph says, including hard construction costs and fees in construction contingency. It doesn't specifically say hardware in that paragraph, but it is all the hardware, the doors and everything is included.
That falls under the umbrella of the hard construction costs.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, I just want to make sure I was understanding.
And they want to use that phrase to delineate from any fees that may, which is just a soft cost that would be added on. So all of it is into that number.
All right, got it, thank you.
But we are technically doing some like what you are thinking of with hard construction, we are doing some of that because
Right.
of that one specific area, but it includes everything.
All right, thanks.
So I do think it's important because we are taking the lowest responsible bidder, not necessarily the lowest bidder, that we're talking about $11,000 difference. So we're not talking about a significant difference. These two bids were very, very close, and on a $650,000 project, all of those things are taken into consideration, and careful consideration is given after the interviews are conducted.
All right, any other comments or questions on this item?
I'd like to ask for this to be on the voting meeting.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, we will move on to the next item, purchase of bus cameras, 2021 bond.
Thank you, Mr. Weber.
Thank
Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
At this time,
Back, are you giving them to us at the next meeting, so you don't have to make them?
no, we're not, this isn't, that's not in the voting meeting. There's nothing to vote on, that was just discussion. You can keep it.
Thank you.
I would invite Mr. Tim Clan. He's the
Thanks,
district's,
Thanks, Brian, thanks, Colin.
Thank you.
he's the district's Administrator of Information Technology and a
Good evening.
well-known face around these parts.
How are you doing?
I asked Mr. Clan to join me tonight because he actually helped spearhead with the Transportation Department the bus camera procurement, just doing the research. You want to introduce Matthew?
We also have Matt McCarty from IDS in the back of the room here, also in case we need his expertise as we move through this. So
Matt's worked with Tim and the other folks with regard to doing the bid and the bid tallies, et cetera, doing the research on the companies. This is really something that we've been looking forward to, and I know that the supervisor of transportation, Vicky Simonik, has been looking forward to this. I know that Rick Martin, who is the garage supervisor, very much, he's been kind of piecemealing some cameras together, keeping them running off of buses that are no longer in use, et cetera. It's not only time, it's probably a little bit past time that we get these upgraded. And not only are we upgrading and updating, we're expanding. A little bit in the same vein as what we talked about at the buildings with those security cameras. These cameras have higher functionality. We're adding, we currently have on any given traditional bus, 1, 2, 3 cameras on those buses. We're actually adding a 4th camera to this bus. We also want to do some other things that we believe is something that gives us a better capability to use the cameras, to have them at our fingertips, if you will. And I'll let Tim talk a little bit more about that, but generally speaking, we're doing a subscription for cellular service in this package. And that will allow us to have live GPS and other live information. Currently, the way our cameras have traditionally worked, and it was phenomenal for a very long time because we didn't have cameras. And then we had cameras. So going out, waiting for that bus to return and going out to that bus, if somebody asked for the video and pulling the little SD card out and then downloading it and then sending it to the person who needed it was great because before that, you couldn't do anything. But this is a change in that we can have live information, which you need the cellular data for to be able to download, and they have cloud storage as opposed to this type of storage we're using now. So it really is, again, not just an expansion and not just an update of, hey, that's old, let's get the new version of that. We're actually getting a different system and this is really the system that our transportation department was excited about, that this is something specifically they said, we really would love to have that. And we were able to, within the budget that we had in the bond for this line item, to deliver that. You want to talk a little bit
yeah,
about that?
thanks, Phil. I mean, in addition, like Phil mentioned, going from 3 cameras to 4 cameras in our standard size buses, the cameras are higher resolution. They're also 180-degree view instead of the traditional kind of 90-degree view. So in addition to having more of them, they cover a wider area on the bus, and they're stationed on the side of the bus, so on the inside, alternating as you go down the bus. So you get a great view, overall view of all the students, all the seats moving back. So that's important. The new system, as Phil mentioned, has the cellular capabilities, and that's included for 5 years in this. The cost of that is included. That gives us the ability to not only see a live feed of the GPS of where the buses are, but if needed, we would be able to even see a live feed of the video from the bus. It also allows us to pull video from the bus while it's moving, because when we need video footage, we can only do that while the bus is on. And so when there's an issue or an incident, we need to pull video from it, we don't have to wait for the bus to come back. They can actually start pulling it at any time. That video that you're watching also shows, I don't know if you'd call it a breadcrumb trail, but it also shows a map. So while you're watching video of the bus, you can see on a map where the bus is at any given time. And it also marks and flags and shows all the functions of the bus. There's a data harness that attaches to the bus's computer system. And so it can flag on the video when the yellow lights come on, when the red lights come on, when the door opens and closes, brake lights, everything that's included, all the functions of the bus show up in that system too. So that's also a really nice additional feature. So
I'm going to go back real quick just to clarify something on the cellular that we're paying for. Because we're paying the 5 years now, they actually froze the cost at the first year, so we won't see any increases in that service over the next 5 years.
Mrs. Frank?
Thank you for that update. So did I hear you say there are 4 cameras on all buses now, or the one bus?
No, right now, on a traditional 72-passenger bus, there are 3 cameras. This system will make 4 cameras, and those cameras have a wider angle that it captures. So not only is, as Tim's saying, the increase of the extra camera gives you more, but just the fact that the cameras that are going to be there gives you more simply because of the breadth that it can capture.
Okay. And I think one of the things that, for anybody who's thinking that's a lot, I think our students are typically struggling a little bit more with behavioral issues that we do need to capture the full scope of the bus, or maybe it's just a function of we need to be able to see what happens on a bus. Is that true?
Really, on a 72-passenger bus, the angle is going to be a big deal for getting that view. The megapixel is going to be a big deal, but having that mid camera, that's when you have that length of that bus, that's where the you can see, but that's where it was tough to catch good detail in the center areas of those seating, because you have one up front shooting to the back, and you have one in the back pointed to the front, and you're getting really good audio and video of the back third and the front third. It's that middle zone that you can see, but it was tough. Yeah. That's going to be a bit of a game change with regard to being able to see and catch exactly what was occurring in any given incident.
Okay.
And I think-
and the new buses have high back seats, or all the, so you get a group of elementary students on there, and if you have a camera in the front and the camera in the back, you get a great shot of the seats. that run through.
I think too, when we think about that, it is a safety issue and a disciplinary issue
Right.
potentially.
Right.
We have up to 72 students on a bus, and generally one adult.
Yeah.
And they're faced in the other direction and really paying attention to driving. And so as much as we'd like to think that on each and every bus, on each and every run, we may not have any issues, it really has proven to be extraordinarily helpful to go back and piece together maybe the origin of an incident, and to be able to determine, even if we have a student who may have gotten off at the wrong stop, to be able to take a look at that and know where they've gotten off. If a student is having a medical issue, I mean, for a lot of different reasons, but certainly it is a time of day that can be problematic as far as some behaviors, just by simply the sheer numbers of students and generally less supervision than you would have really at any other time of the day. So the cameras up till this point have proven to be extraordinarily helpful, and we believe also a deterrent for some of the behavior we had seen previously. So we think that with these enhancements, that will make even more of an impact.
Yeah, I think it's a great investment, especially in our time with our kids and what they're struggling with. And I
Yeah.
just think it's a great use of our funds. The other thing, you said it has GPS. So will the Phil, I forget what we call it, the bus depot or the bus dispatch?
Yes.
Will they have access to that? Like if somebody calls and says my bus is late, is it coming? Will they have real time, or that's just for after the incident, or will the dispatch have access to where the bus is? It is coming. It is not coming.
Right, yeah, I mean, right now, they've always been able to call the driver and say,
Right, call the driver.
where are you
Yeah.
at? And it's already, they don't call as in a phone,
Yeah.
it's all on the radio, but that was why we wanted to look into and accept the cellular service, because a couple of reasons. One, for the downloads to the cloud, because this will have cloud storage service, right? And so we want also to have that live ability, and you need the cellular service to do that, as opposed to waiting to get somewhere to download
Okay.
or upload type of thing. And right now, like we said, we have to wait and go get the card and put that in the computer and take a look. So that all has that capability. And I want to just sort of piggyback on, since we're talking about the cellular service. If you looked deeply at the bid results, REI out of Omaha, Nebraska is the company that we're recommending. Their original bid on what was base bid, if you look, they by dollars aren't the lowest, but Matt at IDS did the math and showed his work, a very nicely done job. If it was a math problem in school, showed his work and actually made a note as well. The original bid had 91 buses, and now we actually have a need for 94 buses. So between that, but more importantly, the cellular service that we're paying for over 5 years, when you bundle it all together, it then becomes overall low in dollars. And it so happens that this is a system that our transportation department was very excited about, and kind of fingers crossed was hoping would come through. So it really worked out well for LPS in that the system we're excited about, and the dollars actually fit in. They are the low bid, and they're the low responsible bidder. And we've talked a lot about like the transportation department. Believe me, principals, assistant principals, the coordinators in student services, the directors and the cabinet members here are excited for this as well, because we want to have like that safety net, but we also want to have the access and to know right away. And this could also work, we talked with Wi-Fi as well. So while we're not loaded with Wi-Fi on the outside of buildings or in the bus yard, we could work towards that over the next 4 or 5 years as well, to bring some Wi-Fi into areas like out in the bus yard, which could help them those downloads and relieve the cellular service.
Thank you.
Mrs. Bradford.
Thank you.
Was that all your question? We were going now?
Good.
I just have a couple questions. I have not been on a bus in a while, I have to admit. The driver, they don't have access to, in their console, they don't see what's in the back of the bus. They only, you know what I'm saying? Because I know in modern cars now, you can pretty much maybe look at what's going on. The bus driver. Yeah, just their regular mirrors. They don't have the opportunity to look way back in the bus, or, you know what I'm saying?
They're not using that technology. They're using the traditional mirrors. That's the safest way. They're not. In fact, we technically don't want them to have access to it, because
Right.
if a driver did
It's
something,
distracting.
we wouldn't. Let's just say that it's very rare, but let's say an employee did something that we need to look at from an HR standpoint. We wouldn't want the driver to have the capability to go after the video and erase things either.
Perfect. I just wasn't sure, because I know technology has changed in automobiles, but I wondered what goes on the buses now. My second question is the camera, the size of the cameras or where they're placed, does that give opportunity for older kids or kids who are taller to vandalize them? Or do we ever have any problems with kids touching the cameras or getting access to those cameras?
Yeah, I don't think we've had many issues with the students. I mean, they're a very well-built camera, and they're, the way they're mounted. A bus is only so tall, so it's not like you can put it out of reach.
Right.
But they are secure, and they have the dome on them, so they can't get to the actual camera. And they're pretty.
Durable.
Well, they're very durable, and they don't stick out as far as you might think like a traditional type camera would.
You'd be surprised
And-
how easily people forget that those are there.
Yeah.
You know, I just wonder, I mean, like I said, I haven't been on a bus, but I'm like, I could see some of our more, some of our students getting inquisitive and, you know,
I've
wanting
been
to.
doing this with transportation since 2016, and have had 3 supervisors, and never have I had a conversation about someone damaging a camera on a bus, a student damage. It didn't even dawn on me until you brought it up, because it's a great question. I thought, that's never even been a conversation. So I think a lot of people, including the drivers, forget that they're even there, because it just becomes ubiquitous.
Yep, and on that note, if a camera was to get damaged, is there any type of warranty or anything for those cameras so that they can be replaced?
Yep, it's a 5-year warranty that goes along with all the cameras and all the components that are involved with that system. So
Okay.
Good question.
they can be replaced at any time, yeah.
Great, thank you so much.
Matt, is there anything that you can think of that you might want to bring up or that we missed?
No, I think you covered it
Do you want
pretty
to have
well.
him join Bill?
Come on up.
Yeah.
We're gonna put you on camera.
Come on, just grab a chair.
Oh, I can stand, that's all right, I'm used to presenting, so.
Give me a
Just
the-
get it on your mic.
The configuration of the cameras, oh, I'm sorry, that's right, we have an audience. So the configuration that we've discussed of the cameras, and I know the discussion was the view, it actually does allow you a better view into the seat, you know, so if a child's trying to do something and not be seen by the camera, with this configuration, you will have a better view actually into the seats, and so that should, that's one of the benefits of going. And the smaller buses, the type A buses will have 3 cameras. Those are
That's
the
right. That was gonna be my
30
clarification.
passenger buses will have 3 cameras, and the larger buses will have 4.
And along that line too, do we have access on those cameras to view what's happening outside the door? Like there are times when there are issues when students are getting on and off and/or parents are present that
So one of
needs to
the
be looked at.
cameras basically looks over the driver's shoulder and out the door. So you see the
That's what I'm
driver,
looking
the
at.
door, and the
Yes.
first couple. It's a 180 degree
Perfect.
view. So you see those first couple of seats, and you see.
We have
the
that now,
kids
but
getting out.
the range isn't, it's a wider
Yeah.
angle, but we've had one that's in that same location at the door.
Okay.
But this gives you a little bit more.
Better quality, wider range.
Can
Okay.
it see out to outside? Can it see to maybe the folks waiting at a bus
To the
stop or
extent
not
that there's
necessarily?
glass.
Just through the whatever windows.
Through the
yeah.
windows. We did look at, the company does make options of cameras. Some districts put 12 cameras on a bus. I mean, they're bristling with cameras. We kind of decided, in talking with the transportation department, that, you know, that would be minimally useful kind of things. You know, windshield, looking out the front. So, you know, just in our discussions, they really decided that what they needed was the inside view.
The sky's always the limit, but we were judicious in
Right.
what was the need.
Right. Mrs. Bradford?
Sorry, I have a follow-up. So let's say we have 90 buses that we install the cameras in. Let's say one of a bus breaks down or we need to replace a bus. How do we, is it easy to reinstall these mechanisms and put them into another vehicle? Or do we have to pay for more or add more?
We're putting them in every bus we have.
Correct,
Yeah.
but let's say we're gonna buy a bus, or in the next 5 years, we have a
Oh, yeah.
5
Oh,
years.
right, okay.
And a bus is no longer gonna be in service, well, what do we do?
Can the
with
So-
camera be moved?
So just, if I might, the other district, one of the other districts that I work with that has the same system, Utica Community Schools, and they have 200 and some buses, and they've actually had this situation. A bus will get in an accident, and then, you know, or they'll get some replacement buses. And the same company that will do the installation can come out, and it's really quite easy for them to take it out of one bus and put it into another.
Okay,
Yeah, because that's important.
Yeah.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Thank you. I apologize if you already covered this. These new system is cellular enabled. how does that work? Do we need a cellular plan for the buses?
That's what we're
It's
paying
included.
for. That's the
So
5-year.
that's the
we-
5-year
yeah,
plan?
And then when we're paying the same amount every year because we're prepaying it, the cost of that service won't go up. So
Okay.
much like you're paying for your phone.
Yeah.
That's what the service that we're paying for, exactly.
Okay, so that's the cellular service
Correct.
itself.
Each,
Okay.
each bus has its own cellular connection.
And it's streamed live to somebody at the other end?
It can be. Everything is recorded on the bus itself in a unit in the front of the bus. But we have access to that video through the cellular network and access to the GPS information and all
And
that.
it's like just always on?
When the bus is running, it's on, yeah.
Okay.
And the drivers have the ability to press a button to mark events. So
Oh,
if
cool.
something's going on in the bus, they don't have to try to remember what time. They can just press a button, it'll mark the event, and so we can go back and review it later.
Okay, that's really great. Does this have a way, I know someone's going to ask me this, to catch those license plates of the cars that go through?
Unfortunately, this system does not. We've looked in the past, and that's something that may be available in the future, and I'm sure, right, for a price,
it.
it's always an option. It's just a matter of, what we do with that information after the fact, and we've had discussions and worked with the city and the police on that as well, so.
Okay, so all those people who are going to call me and ask already have the answer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And as a follow-up to Mrs. Frank's question, say dispatch does want to find out where a given bus is at this moment. Can we pull that up?
Yes.
Without contacting the bus? We just, okay,
Yes.
all right. I want to make sure that was the case. Thank you. Mrs. DeCosta?
Thank you, Mrs. Burton. I just wanted to add that this definitely will go a long way to provide some peace and comfort to a lot of our families that have been questioning things that are happening on the bus and wanting this extra set of eyes. So I appreciate this a lot.
Any other questions, comments?
When will installation be complete?
We are shooting for the end of November.
Okay, very good.
Keep our finger, but certainly by the end of the year,
Calendar.
Calendar, yeah.
Calendar year, yeah.
calendar, yeah,
Yes.
the calendar, end of December.
Yes. You say year, we think of June.
I know, I forget.
Just due to a lot of the weather concerns, they'd really like to get it done by that November timeframe,
Yeah.
so they're not trying to be out in a bus installing it in the middle of winter.
Good idea.
So, although we're providing some access to them for some inside locations where they can do some of those installs as well.
Alrighty, sounds good. So you want this on
Participate
our
in the
regular
voting,
agenda?
please.
Okay, great. And thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you, both of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Our next item is item E, purchase of copier paper. Mr. Francis.
Just a quick, Mrs. O'Quist whispered a quick question, and it's
Oh.
worth repeating about the cameras. The current system will remain, that we won't have a gap in not having cameras.
Oh, right,
They're in
right,
there.
right,
They
right.
just, they come out when the new ones are installed.
Gotcha,
I just wanted to make sure that for the first 2 months, we're still covered.
covered. Good. Thank you.
Copy paper.
Yes,
This is one of those items that is an annual
very
event,
exciting stuff.
and I know everyone gets excited for it.
We're only excited when it's not there. I mean, then that gets people's attention. Yes, not in a good way.
Yeah. So this is a purchase for 3,360 cartons of white traditional 8.5 by 11 paper. The pricing traditionally is still coming through the Wayne County RISA contract. This is $113,770 is the purchase amount that I would be asking the board to approve. There isn't colored paper or anything like that, and this is just the 8.5 by 11 white copy paper, and that's the vast majority of what we use. I always laugh when I find the pack of light blue. I don't know who's using it. So, yes, what's that? Yes, it is a cost increase from over, I'm sorry, decrease over, under, goodness gracious.
Oh,
It is a cost decrease from what it was previously. When we were buying in the past couple of years,
Nice.
there have been some spikes through some of the same reasons that we talked about with construction.
Okay, so the price has gone down.
Wow.
I imagine that's gone down somewhat, but not down to pre-COVID pricing.
$11 a carton, $11
It's-
a carton over
yeah.
last year.
Down from
the
last year.
reduction.
Yeah,
Hey,
so that's a
that's-
pretty
Reduction-
decent, yeah, that's a
reduction of
pretty decent
$11
amount.
per
Mhm.
carton. Okay, excellent.
Not unlike some of the things we talked about with the
Yep.
bond, things
Yep.
are starting to regulate a little bit, but as you may recall, paper had really started to increase and was a bit scarce in its production. So,
And we were having trouble getting trucks to deliver them, so we would have to take them one at a time.
yeah. So that's a really significant decrease for as
Right,
much as we've
that's
done.
nice.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Mrs. Bradford?
Can we put this on the consent agenda?
I would have
I'm-
asked that, yeah.
Yes. Is everyone all right with putting this on the consent agenda? Okay.
Yes.
Mrs. Frank and then President Johnson?
Just, so will this be paper for the full year? Have we been able to, or it's hard because we've not been able to get enough, but are we thinking this should cover us for the full year, or?
I believe so. If we had to have more, we would, I'd have to bring it back, but we generally just make one approval for the
purchase,
year.
okay.
Last year was a unique year where we were doing it because we were limited to how much we did
Yeah,
at one time.
okay.
So we did it a
Okay.
few different times.
Okay, but this is the annual.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
President Johnson?
Great minds think alike. I was going to ask the same thing as Mrs. Frank, so it's covered. Thank you.
Okay. All righty. Any other questions on this? All righty. That's for consent agenda then. And next item is the food service purchases, item F.
I put some of this information into your memo. There's 4 different companies here. This is a purchase just for the traditional annual companies that the food service department makes their purchases from. Generally speaking, they make one large open purchase order, we call it, and then we order weekly, and we get those deliveries on items throughout the course of the year at our schools. So, for example, we're looking for Van Aerden out of Grand Rapids for $2.5 million of approval for the board, from the board. Van Aerden is the company that provides both the actual food product as well as materials and equipment for the kitchen. So we were talking about the paper products and the plasticware, et cetera, along with actual frozen goods and refrigerated goods, and also non-perishable goods. So this is like our main company that we receive. This is for folks who might be listening at home and haven't heard of a Van Aerden. Think Gordon Food Services, you see Cisco trucks. Those are all just those distributors of these same types of items. So this is the company we've been using for years. Van Aerden is approved through the MDE with regard to contractual pricing, and we just use them for these products. And that would also be the same statement for Cedar Crest Dairy out of Hudsonville for $260,000 for the year, also approved through MDE on the contract. Cedar Crest we use, you probably sounds familiar, that's where we get our milk and different other dairy products, yogurts, et cetera. We have MMAS Solutions, they're right out of Livonia. We started using them last year. That was the first year that we went and got some quotes for the compostable fiber trays. So this is the company that was low last year. We went out and got 3 quotes again. They're still the low company. So we're looking to have an open PO with them for $119,500. So again, that would be for the compostable fiber trays. And the 4th company on here, also probably familiar to everybody at this table, the Livonia Italian Bakery in Livonia, Michigan. $48,000. They do the I think they're the pizza rolls that we do, and they're the only ones. Even though we did look around for a couple of companies, we've used the Livonia Italian Bakery because they're the only ones that actually qualify and conform to the federal guidelines for the meal. And there's actually in your packet, I think I did put the notification in the document that Pat Schuhart, supervisor in Food and Nutrition Services, has to fill out and send to the MDE stating such. So this is, unique. I put all 4 of these on here. I would certainly outline all of them in the resolution individually. So I'm not asking to add those 4 up and make one big total. I would specify, as I did in my memo, each one of those, because each one of those would be the amount we put on the purchase order. Now, we worked hard to try to figure out in the last few years, again, they're odd years. We've had some COVID years. It's hard to say where we would be. This coming year, we have the Michigan Meal Program. So again, hard to predict where we're going to be. So we try to take these numbers and we try to put a bit of a buffer, some contingency into them to make sure that we had the right number, to not have to come back to the board in the spring because we overspent. But we're going into a year that we've not done before. Even though we did The federal universal meals, we don't believe that's going to look exactly like what's happening in Michigan through the state legislature's budget and the governor's budget. So,
And remember, we had 28% of our students virtual at that time.
Yeah.
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 So even though we had the universal meals that year, we had 28 of our students learning virtually from home,
Yeah.
so.
So it's going to be a unique year. We talked a little bit about this last year. Last week, somebody had asked about, would a full meal, a federal meal, still be free if it had a dietary restriction? And generally said yes, that would be, but I'll confirm. And yes, because if a student actually states they have, or the family states they have some dietary restriction, that we do work with them, and that's covered. So this is not getting in. I'm going down a bit of a rabbit hole, but for anybody that's listening, that meal program is not for a la carte items. It is for the stated full meal, whether breakfast and or lunch. So it's not, can I get a bag of chips or a cookie for free? And that's not part of the program. There's more detail. Mrs. Jenkins has put together an FAQ, working with the food service department to get some of that information so we can get it out to families. We've had conversations with principals, and actually this Thursday, Ms. Schuhart and myself are joining the elementary principals at their regular meeting just to see if they have questions. And then just a question for you, since we put another item like this on consent, do you want to do it the regular way, or do you want to do this on consent?
I'm fine with it being on consent. Is everyone else okay with it can be consent? Okay.
Okay.
Consent.
And Mrs. Acosta, do you have a question?
Just thank you for following up on that question about the dietary
welcome.
restrictions. I appreciate that.
Any other comments or questions? All righty.
Oh,
Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Frank.
That's okay. Just for the public, that email did go out today with the FAQ that Mrs. Jenkins put out with lots and lots of information for back to school, but also just a lot of information about the free lunch program, just so parents have the opportunity to review it and look at it, because there is a lot of detail to it. It's not just as straightforward as it kind of sounds. So.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the big things that we want to push, and it was the first, I believe it was the first FAQ, is you should, if you have any inkling or indication that you think that your child or your family might qualify for free or reduced meals, absolutely 100% without question fill out the application, because it's not just about the meal at your child's school. Because yes, could they get in line and get that without paying? Yes, without filling out the application. But there are other benefits to the child and to the family if you qualify and you fill out the application, and that's on record. Anywhere from locally in the district with having a lower pay to participate rate, all the way to summer EBT cards from the state of Michigan and other discounts from other companies around the area. So I really want to emphasize, fill it out. If you're not sure if you would qualify or not, fill it out. If you're certain that you're going to qualify, fill it out. If you have no earthly idea, fill it out. Just fill it out. It's the best, safest route when it comes to that, because there's other benefits that can come.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other comments, questions on this topic? No, okay, and this will be going on consent agenda, correct? Okay.
Yes.
All righty. Next item is item G, purchase of Apple technology products for student services. And we'll be hearing from Mrs. Sproul. Good evening.
Hello.
Well, good evening.
Good evening.
So I bring to you tonight a proposal to purchase some iPads, their cases, and the protective warranty for 3 years to support our students in our Act 18 programs within the district. So these are devices that are used by our students across many of our buildings. They're at Roosevelt, Webster, Frost, Franklin, Churchill, across many different classrooms. These are devices that we've used in the past. Some of them are being replaced, and then we're also expanding our repertoire of devices that we have to offer to students. So for many of our students, they use these as communication devices or as tools to access their education. And this is something that's part of our Act 18 budget and is covered by Wayne Risa.
Comments or questions on this item? President Johnson.
Just a question. How many devices are we talking about? It was looking at the,
Yep. So there's 76 devices total. 20 of those are for our MOCI program and 56 for our program for students with autism.
Okay, great, thanks.
All right. And this is basically a continuation of the types of products that we've been using with these students.
Absolutely. So we have explored many different options for our students that have some unique communication needs and learning needs. And we found that the iPads are really something that many of our students have familiarity with at home. And we want to continue to build on that and just make their communication and their learning more and more accessible.
Okay. And we've seen some of these over the years, but for
Yeah.
those who are listening from home, can you just give us one or two examples? Because some of them are just amazing about what those devices can do in terms of communication.
Yeah. So we really call those devices our students' voices, and we'll say, make sure you grab your voice as you're heading to your special so that you can communicate with, teachers and peers in all different environments. So it's something that we take great pride in being able to offer a wide variety to all of our students, and we have some very simplistic devices that might offer students just 3 or 4 communication choices if that's where they're at the moment in terms of being able to plan motorically and find that right area of a screen, all the way up to students who are using very expansive devices where they can switch between pages and have topics that relate to home and to school so that we can make that homeschool communication connection as well. So it's pretty amazing to see some of our students in action and to see our professional staff that really, they've become pros at just making this device the just right fit for our students. It's a great thing.
Okay, great. All righty, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay. And this will probably be on the regular agenda then?
That's right, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And that concludes Building and Site.
Thank you, Mrs. Burton. That takes us to item 4, our curriculum committee, and Mrs. Acosta.
Thank you, President Johnson. Our first item, item 4A, is grades 5 through 6 social studies textbook adoption, and Mrs. O'Brien will lead this discussion.
Good evening. Thank you, Mrs. Acosta. I am happy to bring our upper elementary 5th and 6th grade textbook recommendation to you. This textbook adoption committee has worked for several years. They started back in 2018. When we did a resource review at our upper elementaries and teachers identified in what order they felt they needed new materials. So we got new science materials, then we got new math materials, new ELA materials last year. So social studies has been looking and meeting as a group of teacher leaders with Mrs. Corey about the new standards that had gotten updated a few years back. There were very few changes for upper elementary. Continued to talk about utilizing our MC3 Michigan free curriculum versus adopting a textbook. We did look at utilizing MC3 framework and those materials, but really felt like a textbook like History Alive, which we currently use, the older version in 5th grade, was the book that both students and teachers recommended out of this committee. So this committee last year piloted for most of the year. In fact, they went right almost till the end of school, which is why I'm bringing you the recommendation now instead of in June. So this recommendation provides students with a teacher with classroom sets of textbooks and 6 years of licenses, and then teacher license and teacher materials for both 5th and 6th grade. There is a set of activity cards that the publisher is also providing us for free. These materials will be used at Webster, Nijiiro, and our 3, 5, 6 upper elementary schools.
Comments or questions on this item?
Any questions?
Oh, I'm sorry. Never mind.
I was waiting to see.
I've been doing that. This would have been item H on Building and Site, but it's not. Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Already been a long night.
Yes, yes.
Any questions, Mrs. Frank?
So are they going to use them this year?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So we'll have the digital licenses before PD. So we've already arranged for our professional development so that it will be on our district PD day for them. So we'll be able to turn on their licenses, and then we'll get the print materials as fast as we get it approved next week by the board.
Okay. Do you have any idea how long that would be? Like, is it, they'll just use digital until they get the
Yeah.
print?
Mhm.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mrs. O'Brien.
You're welcome.
Is that going to go on regular?
Yes. Item 4B is creative curriculum. Mrs. O'Brien.
Thank you. So creative curriculum is our curriculum we utilize at Jackson Center. And if you recall, it was a little over 2 years ago that Carol Kerrigan brought a textbook recommendation to use creative curriculum with our daycare students, our early childhood students, and our young 5 students, and wanted to create a curriculum map for what a preschooler would utilize prior to coming to kindergarten. During that time, Mrs. Kerrigan left, Dr. Dodge has become the principal. As you know, last spring, that first 2-year license kind of ran out and it hadn't been utilized to its best ability. There is a box set of materials for each teacher to utilize, which has materials for about 6 units. The reason I'm bringing a request to up their license for 3 more years is really there are 15 units in the online materials so that Dr. Dodge can do that work of creating a curriculum map from 3-year-old to young 5s with a different set of units for each one that are aligned to the early childhood standards. We have worked with, again, Mrs. Corey, the elementary coordinator, to have a CAL, so a content area leader for Jackson Center this year to help Dr. Dodge and her team do that work. So the license ran out last spring. We extended it for the last couple of months. And so this purchase, it's $24,150 for 3 years to have access to the Creative Curriculum Cloud. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mrs. Bradford.
Thank you. Do all the teachers have access to the curriculum cloud? So it's for every teacher in the building to have that
Correct.
access? Okay.
Daycare through young 5s, yes.
Perfect, thank you.
President Johnson.
Thank you. And this amount is below what we need to vote on, so this is just advising us, we don't have to vote on this, right?
Yep,
Okay.
sharing with you what we're doing, so it won't need to go to the regular meeting, but I just wanted to share with you where we were at with this.
Yeah, we appreciate that, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Item 4C, iReady diagnostic licenses.
So I did not get a new quote for you for this evening, so I do have a quote that is incorrect, but I just wanted you to have it. I will have a correct quote for next week's meeting. So Curriculum Associates is our company that we utilize for our iReady diagnostic and some instructional licenses. They sent this quote, and it had $36,000 in professional development in it. Every year they suggest to us that we have 1 or 2 days per building of professional development. And, you know, we have competing needs, right? So there's only so many days. So I've requested that they take that off. I have days that are rolling over from last year's purchase that I would like to utilize first. And then if I need to buy some additional ones, I'm more than happy to do that. But to have this many days, 18 days at $2,000 a day doesn't make sense to us. So Mr. Hillard is working with them to take these off and then to schedule the 7 that I have from last year, 1 being for new teachers, so they have an opportunity to get in and dig into iReady, and then a focus on our 5, 6, and our 7, 8 buildings on utilizing iReady. So one thing I wanted you to notice, so then the total cost would go down to the $110,789. And this assessment we give 3 times a year to kindergarten through 8th grade. Last year, we gave it at 9th grade as a part of our PA 48. Our high school ELA teachers and their administrators would like to use their common assessments instead of iReady this year for PA 48 if it continues. So we would have a shift. We didn't utilize their math at 9th grade, but we would shift to our district common summative assessments as a part of our PA 48 for this year instead of iReady for 9th grade. We only utilized it for 9th grade. Another thing I'd like you to notice is, so they typically break it out by building, and each building has a few instructional licenses. It's 250 total when you add those all up. That's what we request. We typically utilize those for support classes, for some of our special ed classrooms, and then targeted students based on their needs. And sometimes a building buys additional ones they'd like more. Parents would like them. They utilize it as a part of their school improvement, but we typically buy 250 ELA, 250 math instructional licenses. And then the last thing I wanted to bring your attention to is that their prices went up. So if you look at any given school, it says the list price is $7.25 and the discount they're giving us is $5.80 per diagnostic license. It used to be $6 for the diagnostic license, and we got a discount to be $5.40. So it's a 40-cent increase per diagnostic, and we buy a lot of diagnostics, so that is the reason it's a little bit higher. And then those instructional licenses used to be $24, and now they're $27. So there's a slight increase from Curriculum Associates on this quote, which I just wanted to make you aware of. So I thought if I shared pretty in-depth this quote, and then they took the professional development off, I will email you the updated quote as soon as Mr. Tompkins sends it to me. He was not there. His email responder on Friday and today was out of the office.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Mrs. Burton?
Does this mean that for the 9th graders, since they're not going to be using this, they're going to be using the LPS-specific test, does that mean they will have one less test that they're going to have to go through the process of?
The 9th graders? Yes,
Yes.
they won't be taking iReady 3 times next year.
Okay,
No.
already, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? So this will go on the regular voting meeting with the updated.
Can it be on the
Yep, consent. Can we put it on
consent agenda because it is a yearly purchase?
I'm fine with
Are
that.
we okay with that?
Yep.
I'm good with that, that's
Okay.
fine.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. O'Brien.
Thank you.
And item 4D, Caring Schools Curriculum, Mr. Green. Good evening.
Good evening, Ms. Acosta. How you doing? It's time.
Good evening.
Have some things to bring to the board tonight, but before I do, I'm very excited that we're getting ready to launch our 23-24 school year at the elementary level. So the items I'm going to bring forth this evening are carryovers from last year and items that we talked about at the study session on the 31st. So the first item is the Caring Schools curriculum for grades K through 6 at the July 31st study session. Brought to the attention of the board that we have been purchasing materials for the last several years for our Caring Schools curriculum, which is part of our social emotional learning Tier 1 curriculum in our school district, along with our PBIS work and our community with character elements. And so what that means is every day in our elementary schools, our students are going to have an opportunity to have a morning meeting with their classroom teacher. So the rationale for bringing this purchase to the board this evening for voting next week at our board meeting would be, we want every teacher to have the necessary kits and materials. And so over the last several years, we've been building up these material budget items, and we're getting pretty close to having every teacher at the elementary have their own kits for the grade level they teach. If they switch grade levels in the next year, the kit stays with that grade level. So the purchase amount would be $36,400. Made to the Caring Schools curriculum. They are the sole provider of this material. And if you think about our study session back at Randolph in the spring, this would be the time of the day when the students come into our buildings and have that very orderly, safe arrival. And then we spend some time before we get into the curriculum of academics working on things in our morning meeting. They may be related to the things that we're doing in the classroom, things that are up and coming. But what's really amazing about the Caring Schools curriculum is that there's so many lessons and units linked to natural things that are happening in our classrooms throughout the year. How to act when you have a guest teacher. An assembly's coming up. A field trip is coming up. A variety of lessons. And, you know, I'm the guy bringing the order to the board, but there's been so many people behind the scenes for the last several years that have worked on this work in educating our elementary principals, providing professional development to our staff on how to teach these units. And I would like to thank Kristen Jacobson-Harm for her leadership over the past several years bringing these modules to us. And I'd like to thank the entire team of Student Services, Dr. Jen Terrell and Megan, for their support and continuous efforts to, make sure that we're not minimizing the social emotional needs of our students, and that we're really working with them on those life skills, those soft skills, quite oftentimes the skills that really make or break us in life when we're out of school and we're working in different professions. And I want to thank Teresa O'Brien and the Academic Services Department for taking a look at the Learning Day and recognizing there's never enough minutes in the day to get all the work done that we want to get done in our academic curriculum, but allowing and supporting time in our elementary day to designate these minutes are for our students, and we give you teachers permission to make sure that you're bringing the class to the carpet or the method that you use and going through these lessons. And as we've built this up over the last several years, many members of the Student Services Department has worked building leaders and teachers and getting input, surveying them, and they've actually provided in our yearly year-at-a-glance document a hyperlink where they can then look and see what is the week of August 28th recommend. So for example, the first week of school, we're going to work on what is a morning circle, our classroom procedures, the good morning, how we greet each other, and kind of a review of the first week and playground behavior. It sounds pretty appropriate for an elementary first week of school. And throughout the year, they've linked appropriately when certain lessons would have higher impact. And what's great is the teachers have autonomy to, if there's something in their class that pops up through their own skill and talents, knowing their kids, they have that time at the beginning of the day built into the schedule as well. So I bring this to the board for a vote at our next board meeting for the purchase of those additional materials from the Caring Schools curriculum from the Center for the Collaborative Classroom.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Mrs. Bradford.
Thank you, Mrs. Acosta. Mr. Green, this curriculum is for K to 6. This is like a non-negotiable. Every teacher will not have we are recommending they use this. So in other words, they have to use it every day. It's not.
Correct. Yes, correct.
It's not a choice for them, right?
Yep,
This
it's
is
so-
something that they're all being trained in, and they're all going to be expected to do this routine daily, every day.
Every day, and we built that time in the schedule, and as I mentioned, the way that they paced out the units, it allows teachers some autonomy to add other things in their morning meetings throughout the week. For example, I'll give you an idea. When I was a classroom teacher, and we went on a field trip, and if I wasn't loving how things worked out, that's going to be my morning meeting the next day, because you don't want to miss out on those teachable units. We have character element themes every month in our elementary schools. Those are integrated as well. But what's been wonderful about the work and student services that they've done with the buildings is getting that feedback, just like our academic services department does on pacing. They put out a plan. People use the plan, and then they give feedback and see where do we need to make tweaks. But this isn't just something that we should see on boxes on a shelf. This is something that we should see teachers using actively daily. And our elementary principals know this is part of that daily routine. And so now I'm going to ask you to all give everybody a little grace the first week of school on this. But, but I will say this is something that the expectation is clear. We're using this. We're using it daily. And we are going to be able to give feedback, and teachers' voice is very important on this. And so we have great processes in place to continue to collect their feedback.
That's great. I just want to make sure that that's part of the expectation. And of course, we all know things happen during the classroom days, mornings, different routines. But the gist is there that this program, and this is the first year that we're using the program, so it's kind of like.
Oh, no, we've been using it for several years now.
Okay,
And we
okay.
started with a very small pilot right around the COVID, and then it kind of, everything kind of took a pause, and then we've been building it up, piloted in several schools, and then.
Okay, but this
and have
is the
grown it.
first year the entire
This is the
district will
first year
use it.
everybody will have their own sets. That's why this is
Perfect,
coming
okay.
forward. So sharing is hard, even though it is a morning meeting lesson, sharing. Sometimes with kits and materials, it
It
is
is
can be a
hard to
little
go from
tricky.
classroom to classroom with those materials.
But no, those are great questions. Thank you.
Okay, great, thanks for clarifying all that.
Mrs. Burton?
One other benefit that I see to utilizing this is assuming that on an average day, or an average week, the teachers are covering the same material throughout the building. Then when those kids go home, it makes it easier for mom and dad to reinforce those lessons. If that topic comes up that you were talking about this topic in your first grade classroom, Timmy, and you find out Janie in third grade, she had a similar lesson too. It helps reinforce that learning at home, because when all of your kids are talking about the same thing, or at least if someone brings it up, you can pull that theme through the whole family that week. So I love this being a district-wide, and that, like you said, there are going to be differences when life throws different things into the classroom on a given day. But on the whole, basically district-wide, each week we're talking about the same items, K through 6, in those buildings. So that's exciting to me for family reinforcement.
And it is, it's something that is a set time, but make no mistake, all day long, we're building those relationships, and we're making those social emotional connections, and we're correcting and coaching kids up all day long. So it's not like we do this for 30 minutes and say, so the rest of the day is just academics, and we're not.
Nor is it.
No, but it's just such a wonderful, and the board has been supportive, and the cabinet team on building this collaboration model at our elementary, where this will become one of the subjects where grade level teams meet, and they'll notice, hey, I've been getting some reports back from our special area teachers that our class isn't doing as good as they should be, but you're not, so what are you doing differently? And these are the kind of conversations that evolve around these topics, so.
I was going to say, know that since this time is already built into the schedule, I appreciate the fact that we're providing our teachers with a resource to fill that time. Not that they have a lack of things to do during that time, but it always is helpful to have some guidance, so thank you.
Those resources are so important.
Yes. Any other questions, comments? Okay.
Just
Mrs. Burton?
This type of learning does not stop at the end of elementary school. My husband is also a coach of one of the JV soccer teams during the fall, and this kind of learning is part of the coaching curriculum, even up into high school. And occasionally, like you said, with your field trip, sometimes things don't go as well as you would love to have had them go. But I give kudos to our coaches. In addition to our teachers, our coaches are chair people of our extracurricular clubs and so forth, because when things don't go as well as we would have liked to have had them go, they're creative too in helping the kids, even at the high school level, stop, get together, and say, okay, how could this have gone better? And students, what are you going to do now to rectify the situation? So this kind of social emotional learning is not just for K-6, but it's built upon, and the expectation is laid, but it carries through all the way through LPS. So
In the morning meeting's powerful, because a lot of children realize that, oh, I was thinking the same thing, or I'm having the same struggle, and it's safe.
Yeah.
And it's a good place for that community to be built.
Yeah, excellent.
Thank you so much, Mr. Green. We'll move on to item 4E, purchase of project Lead the Way materials.
Okay, so Director Smith's going to join me for some of the number crunching pieces of this. But this is again on the July 31st study session. we brought the information about the need to continue and start ordering our Project Lead the Way materials for the 23-24 school year. To build background again for the board and the community watching this evening, last year we had a pilot at 3 of our schools, Hayes, Randolph, and Hoover, where we examined if we wanted to and could bring a 5th special to our elementary program. And as you know from that presentation that you received last year, and again, the previous spring, it's more than just adding a 5th special, but the special that we researched and settled in on was Project Lead the Way. It made logical sense because of not only its reputation, we had experience with Project Lead the Way at our secondary level for several years, and with the movement towards a STEM curriculum and the robotics, it was just all aligning perfectly. And we, as you know, had a successful pilot last year at those 3 schools. Wanted to thank the 3 lead teachers of Project Lead the Way at those schools for their leadership and their honesty, hosting various sessions for us to take a look at the program, examine it, from board members to teachers to administrators to politicians. You know, that's quite an accomplishment in year 1 of a pilot to have a lens that close on a program that we're considering to bring to Livonia. With that, working with the company, we started to organize our spreadsheets when we received word from the board that we could move forward with that, and wanting to get teachers in a position of success when they came back. Our HR department did some amazing lifting with our building leaders to get all of our Project Lead the Way teachers staffed in the spring of this year. And Cindy Herbeck, with work with the finance department, has been able to order materials lists, get those ready to go. And that's not an easy task when you're looking at all different buildings and making sure that those shipments go to each building. So I wanted to acknowledge Ms. Herbeck for all of her efforts, and obviously my cabinet team for supporting this 5th special at the elementary. This is, again, another connection to the caring schools, and then that this 5th special at elementary is allowing us to build daily common planning time for our teaching staff. I've heard stories over the summer when we've been securing employees that this is an amazing point of pride and a point of attraction for Livonia Public Schools. And it quite honestly is one of the most impactful ways to support our professional learning community culture that we're building on that journey with our school district. With that said, there's logistics, and that is the material piece. So we talked at that study session of the cost of those materials, and I was going to turn it over to you at this time, Ms. Smith.
Sounds good. As Bill mentioned, we did have the benefit of doing a pilot last year for the 3 schools, and it has been great because we've taken feedback that they provided to us to know what things to order again, what things we probably could leave off the order. So there was definitely some efficiencies in doing that pilot that first year. So for this first year, for all of our I was going to say K4. It's K4 as well as the 5-6s as well as Niji and Webster. The total cost for the materials is $324,000. That will be the most that it is. We have a drop-off next year for year 2. The expected cost is $56,000. So there's a lot of things that you're buying initially and that you don't have to buy year over year. One thing we did want to talk to the board about, we of course have the quotes of exactly what we'd like to order for the school year, but because it's new and going across so many buildings, we wanted to see if you'd be comfortable with us putting some contingency on there so that if there is a need to purchase more, we don't have to come back. So something, if we did like a 10% contingency, that would put it about $350,000. And again, we wouldn't plan to spend that money, but that would just be something that we could have in reserves in case we needed to tap into that.
Mrs. Bradford.
Thank you. I think that's a good number to settle on. Obviously, items might break or something might happen, and you may have to reorder some items and things, and that way that would give a little cushion for that. So I think that's a great idea.
Mrs. Burton.
And just repeating, you said this is for all K4, Webster, and Niji Euro.
Correct.
Correct? Okay,
Yep,
thank
and
you.
5-6.
And 5-6, okay.
Yep.
I'm always missing something. Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Add in there too, this does include the refills then for the 3 pilot schools too. So we've adjusted that and are just getting the things that they need for this coming year for their year 2. Yeah.
Mrs. Bonnefield.
I just want to commend everybody on this move. I know sometimes education can be a slow-moving process. But it just, with the morning meeting and the caring schools and the 5, even as an adult, I feel like it gives me a sense of calm and order, and I think it gives the kids a little more control over their day. They know what to expect, and which is a lot like going to your job, right? And I think that these skills, these kids are so precocious at these ages. You know, they've got older siblings, they've seen their family members, brothers and sisters, mom and dad go to work, and I think that this just brings that level of, I hate to say professionalism to the kids' days, but I think this is going to be great for everyone, and the collaboration that we're going to see. I just think this is a huge leap forward for our education process and moving everybody forward to really drill down to the individual students and start making those strides that we have struggled with some of our scores and stuff like that. And I'm really excited to see how this impacts our kids and their learning. But I really, you guys put a ton of time and effort into this. I know that there's been pushback here and there, and we've moved forward on it. It was a pretty quick turnaround. We piloted 1 year, and I think it's going to be so beneficial for the kids. And the consistency, now I know I'm going back to the previous item, but the caring schools, just the consistency of our messages and the consistency of the kids learning, so that as they go through their school year, right, there's a certain amount of consistency there where, you know, one of my kids' struggles was, well, you know, Susie did this or Bobby did that, or how come this is, or why that, right? And we're providing consistent learning opportunities across the district. We're providing consistent messages across the district. And so I think that it's really going to bring everybody together, give a consistent message, and I'm really excited to see the outcomes and the quality of education that our students are going to get.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Bonnefield. And President Johnson.
Thank you, Ms. Acosta. One of the things that really struck me when we had the visit over to Hoover in the spring was the level of engagement of these students that were involved in this project. If we get others to engage like that at the 5, 6, and the other elementary schools, you can just see how this is going to just grow and blossom. I was just amazed, really, at how these kids were paying attention to what was going on, and they were engaged in the project. I think if that level of engagement continues at the other grades, this is going to be a really, it's a win-win. It's going to be spectacular. So thanks for all the work that you've put into this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Mrs. Bradford.
So if we do go ahead and vote this in, will the materials be ready by the beginning of the school year?
They will, because we are doing a tiered approach to the ordering to make sure we have trimester 1 first. So
Excellent.
we have a module layout that our pilot school teachers have worked on, partnered with academic services, reviewed those modules and make sure they fit into the instructional complement of the instruction going on in our tier 1. And so we've made sure that our first trimester materials are ready to go on time. Todd over in the warehouse is an amazing person, and he gets those materials out to the buildings as soon as possible.
And I also want to echo the same compliments. I'm excited for this program to happen. It is a big shift, as Tammy said, but I think it's a shift in the right direction, and I think it's going to be really an exciting school year for our K-6 students. I think they're going to see a lot of changes happening, and it'll take probably the whole year for sure to figure everything out, if not more than a year, just to figure out how everything's going to connect and work. But I'm just really excited to see this program and the Caring Schools curriculum happen. And yeah, it's going to be a great year. So I'm excited for Project Lead the Way. So thanks to everybody. Sounds like you've put so much thought into it, all the way down to having the materials, brought in parts, so that everybody's ready, and getting our staff ready to do the teaching for Project Lead the Way. So
It's our staff. It's not
yeah.
me. It's our leaders. It's our teachers.
Exactly.
They make it happen every day.
And it's driven all by them, and they, I'm sure they're so excited to start the year, and as they've properly trained for everything, I'm sure there'll be little bobbles along the way, but they're going to learn, and everybody's going to have a lot of fun with this program, so I can't wait to see it.
Look forward to providing you updates throughout the year on both.
Mrs. Jarvis.
Thank you. I was just going to say, I look forward to getting updates on this.
Absolutely.
I'm very excited by the Project Lead the Way program. I think that the structure of it, the design of it, is so meticulous. It's ingenious. And I love the way it addresses so many of the needs that are in our schools, for not only for the students, but also for the staff, the teachers, the specials. It really does cover every base. And when we did visit the school and got some feedback, it really blew me out of the water. It exceeded all expectations. This is the kind of program that makes a student excited to go to school. It's also the kind of program that makes a teacher excited to go to school. So I'm excited about it and really want to see what the result is. I really think this is going to be a game changer.
Thank you. I want to echo what everyone else said also, and I know that change is difficult for anyone at any level, both students and staff, and I just want to thank in advance the staff that's embracing this change towards a consistent schedule and shared planning, which has, there's been all the PLCs, and I feel like all the stars are aligning, and we have this wonderful opportunity before us, so thank you to everyone involved.
Thank you.
And that's everything for, okay, thank you so much, Mr. Green and Mrs. Smith.
Thank you.
And that concludes our curriculum committee report.
Thank you, Mrs. Costa. That will then take us to item 5, our Finance Committee, and I'll turn it over to Mrs. Battlefield.
Thank you, President Johnson. Our first item with Mrs. Smith is the 23-24 tuition rate.
Thank you. This first agenda item has to do with our board policy, JBCB, which talks about non-resident students. And I know you're very familiar with that. We just, I believe, took a look at that within the last couple months. What that board policy says is that in general, we do not take non-resident students. We do have the provision that the superintendent can make an exception to that rule. One example of that would be a student going into their senior year of high school, but maybe their residency changes, they've moved to another city. We have the ability to allow them to attend Livonia Public Schools. So state law dictates that if that is the case, that the school district needs to establish a tuition rate, and they give us the formula for doing that. It's a pretty simple formula. It's our general fund operating expenditures less capital outlays, and we divide that by the number of students that we have to come up with an average cost per student. So last year, the tuition rate was $12,264, and this year it has gone up to $13,037. And if you're wondering, the family wouldn't receive an invoice for $13,000. We would get the foundation allowance for that student, and then the family would be responsible for the difference between the foundation allowance received from the state and the amount of tuition that we calculate each year. So this has been it's a standard one that we bring to the board. I can tell you that we don't utilize it a lot. We don't have too many that fall into that special category, but when it does arise, the board approving this tuition rate would allow us to move forward with that.
Mrs. Bradford.
Thank you. Have you ever run into an issue with a family who cannot afford the makeup of the difference? And is there, is that just a non-negotiable that has to happen, or do you have anybody that gets assistance with that or help?
You know,
Yes, sir.
honestly, I can tell you it hasn't come up very often, but I believe we do have processes that
To
they would
help.
reach out. Yep. I believe they would reach out to Mr. E2 in the secondary office, and we would take it on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Burton?
And just for clarity for folks at home, this does not apply to our schools of choice students.
That is correct. Through the Schools of Choice window, which we normally do in the spring, those students come to us, and we are not in a place that we need to charge tuition. The state allows us to claim their foundation allowance, and no tuition is needed from families.
Right. And in that case, there are very strict procedures we have to follow from the state in order to comply with that
Correct.
process.
Yep.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Other questions?
And I'll have a question for the board, if it's all right with you. In past years, this has gone on consent agenda, if that's okay with you. Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, Mrs. Smith is going to continue with a fresh item on our agenda, our bus purchases.
Thank you. This is a fun item for me. I'm excited that we're in a position to be able to talk about buying new buses. I know that a few have been around for quite a while, and you know the time when we didn't have money to keep our bus fleet current, and we were getting every little bit out of those buses that we possibly could. Thankfully, with the passage of the 2013 bond, we were able to start moving towards a regular bus replacement cycle, and we've been able to continue that now with the 2021 bond. Our total budget for buses, we just talked about that earlier this evening. Our overall budget is $5 million for buses. We saw on that slide $6 million. That's $1 million set aside for maintenance equipment, and we have $5 million set aside for school bus purchases. We've definitely seen a change in the landscape for buying school buses over the last several years. We now, I'll give you some numbers. So with this 2021 bond, we, the board, approved back in July of 2021, the purchase of buses for a total of $631,000, and we just received those in the winter of 2023. So we're looking at a 14-month lead time for these buses, which has not been the case. I did check too. This was so long ago. We did place a second bus, so those buses have been received, and those are now on our now in our part of our fleet and are being utilized. The board also approved back in December of 2020 another $744,000 worth of buses. Those are still yet to be received. We did just get an update from our garage supervisor, Mr. Martin, that they're hopeful that those will be received. They say that they're in production right now, and we should be able to receive those by the end of this calendar year. So we're looking at a 12-month lead time for those. And at that time, we were hearing about limited supply of the parts needed to build the buses. So we were excited. We found out that there are 10 chassis. I'm getting a little out of my area of expertise, but these parts needed to build the buses, that there's 10 for our region. So that's not very many. So we have the possibility to move on these 10. Over the last several years, we've always operated through the Michigan School Business Officials bus purchasing program. They, since I've been in this role, so since 2016, have always solicited and gotten responses back from 3 companies, Hoekstra, Holland, and Midwest Transit are the 3 dealers that are partnered up. I learned a lot about buses. So the manufacturers designate a particular dealer for their buses, and then that's the approved dealer. So Holland is the approved dealer for Microbird, which has been the majority of buses we've gotten through Holland for Microbird. Hoekstra makes Thomas buses, and Midwest makes Collins buses. Again, because we have a history over the last several years of purchasing these buses, we can see that these prices of the buses are generally very close together. Generally, the Hoekstra and Holland are the closest in price, and then the Midwest with the Collins body has been the more expensive of the 2. Rick Martin explained that the body of the Collins, it's got a very nice body, which then they can charge more for it, but in his opinion, it hasn't been worth that additional cost, so we don't have any of those in our fleet. Primarily, it's the Holland, the Microbirds. So I started to share, we normally get this through the MSBO purchasing program. They do shut down every year, starting in August through October, and that's their time to go back out and get bids, get prices, and then it will reopen in November. It is my recommendation that we don't wait till November because of the limited supply, because there's only 10 available for our region. So with the board's approval, I would like to recommend moving forward with the purchase of 5 mini buses, which is they're the oldest buses in our fleet currently. They were received in the district in 2013, so they're going on about 10 years worth of service. We would be able to sell those and get something from an auction for those, but then this would put those to rest and we would replace that with these 5 new buses. We did get some quotes on our own, reaching out to the dealers to make sure that the prices are competitive. The price for the Holland Microbird is $91,807 per bus for a total cost of $459,035. We did hear back also from Hoekstra, who makes the Thomas bus. Their quote was for $92,500, and that was for 5 buses would be $462,500. So you can see very close, within a couple $1,000s of each other. In talking with Mr. Martin, it's his preference to go with the Holland dealer for the Microbird buses because that's what we have in our fleet. So we have the parts on hand for the Microbird buses. Not to say we couldn't get parts for the other buses, but there's some efficiencies in going with the Microbirds. It's also his experience in working with them. Holland not only sells the buses, they also provide service and parts after the purchase. And he said that they have been fantastic to work with, very responsive, and he would love to continue that relationship with them. So that is my recommendation. It's within the budget we have set aside for the bond for this purchase, would be, again, to move forward with these 5 buses. So I'll pause there. That was a lot of information. If there's anything I can answer for you.
Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mrs. Bonnefield. 2 questions. One, reading your memo, we would be circumventing them, the MSBO, going around, not waiting for them?
Correct.
Okay. And these are the 30-passenger buses, the smaller buses?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And in my, going back to our administrative procedures for purchasing, we have that it's competitive bids or competitive prices for the buses. And I feel like we've had that by reaching out and getting numbers from more than one vendor. And we know, too, in looking back over the last, 5 years, that when we do see the prices, these vendors are very close in price. So I do feel like we're getting the price that we can get. I don't think we're going to find a better deal. So I feel, we definitely meet the requirements of our purchasing procedure there.
Any other questions? I'm not suggesting that we wait. My question is, do we think that the price that'll come back in November is going to be reflective of what we're paying, and that, I don't know, for the lack of a better, they're not sticking it to us because we're getting it outside of the pricing, that it's probably going to see a very close number as to if we waited till November.
Our feeling is the price will actually go up if we do wait till November.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
That answers my question. Mrs. Bradford.
I know you did an excellent job explaining about this whole process. But my question is, so you said they have 10 chassis in our region in October 2023. Does that mean we're going to actually be able to receive them? As opposed to, like when you were saying we weren't getting our buses for 2 years, are we going to actually be able to receive these?
The lead time is still a long lead time. I would guess still it's going to be a year, but I don't think we can go anywhere else and get them any faster.
Oh, okay, so it'll still be that same. Yeah, just because they're in the region in October, that's when they have to all be built and made.
Yep.
It's still going to take a long lead time.
Yep.
Okay.
And I can't, I mean, just imagining how many school districts across Michigan too, and to think we're all vying for 10, you know? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and not to say, I know there's, used buses available. It hasn't been our practice to purchase used buses. We have been fortunate, in fact, Mr. Martin is great at updating me because we are on a good regular replacement cycle. Thank you. We have been able to get some money back for the buses too, whereas before they were really sold for scraps. You know, now we're actually getting something back, which is very helpful. So, and those proceeds, based on our board policy, are going into our capital projects fund. Because of where our fund balance is, we put our proceed from sale of capital assets into the capital projects fund.
Perfect. So, Mr. Johnson, I saw you right,
She answered my question.
and then I saw,
That was my question answered
and then
also.
I saw,
Oh, yeah, this is just me one more time. I do want to thank the, no, this is something totally different. I just want to thank the bus department for their, every time we see the buses out in Livonia, they're always so clean and they just always look in good shape. My mother-in-law, who's 92, she always notices the Livonia buses and makes note of it, and she says, wow, your buses are always clean and look so great. And I know we bought the wash, we have a washing.
the bus wash.
Wash, and I just want to commend the whole team for keeping the buses in such good shape all the time and keeping them clean out on the streets. It does make a difference to people in the community when they see a nice, clean bus. I know it seems silly, but it's great that we have nice, clean buses out there, so thank you.
We'll pass that on to them. I'm sure they would appreciate hearing that. And it's nice too, because I can say not only are the outsides nice, but the insides are nice too during the summertime when we have a little bit of downtime. We've got folks that are cleaning the insides and scrubbing them and washing windows and getting them ready for this new school year. So let them know that it is noticed and appreciated.
Yes.
Any other questions? And we will vote on this on next Monday.
Perfect. The 21st would be great.
Okay.
Wonderful.
And that concludes the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Mrs. Battlefield. That'll take us to item 6, our Policy Committee. Mrs. Frank.
We do not, but we will get back on our cycle starting in September. So we appreciate the
Your
time this
bicycle?
summer pardon?
Your bicycle?
Yes. We'll get back on a normal cycle of reviewing those policies. So we've appreciated some time this summer to concentrate on many other things to get the school year started. But we know the board is very desirous of that being kept up. So Mrs. Frank, I'll reach out to you in the next several weeks and we'll get going on that cycle again. Thank you.
That concludes policy.
Thank you, Mrs. Frank. That'll take us to item 7, our Personnel Committee. Mrs. Bradford.
Wow, I can't believe we don't have anything on for personnel. That's
We do
good.
not.
Okay, we're
We'll
all
be
set.
busy next week at the regular meeting, but nothing for committee of the whole.
Sounds great, thank you. So we're all finished with that one.
Thank you, Mrs. Bradford. That'll take us to item 8, Legislative Committee. Mrs. Jarvis.
We have nothing on the agenda for the Legislative Committee, although I would like to just step aside and remind everybody about our Bounce Back to School event coming up on the 22nd. Please mark your calendar if you haven't already. It is the most popular event of the year. Look forward to seeing everyone there.
Thank you, Mrs. Jarvis. That brings us to the end of our agenda. So we will bid you good evening.